Remember Adventure Time, right? The show that felt like a chaotic collection of random jokes, weird slang and bacon pancakes? But here is the crazy part. It wasn't random at all. Over 10 seasons, this silly cartoon quietly built one of the most complex, interconnected timelines in television history. We're going to connect the dots you likely missed, like how a throwaway detail in Season 1 actually predicts the grand finale, or the secret meaning behind the Catalyst Comets. We are making sense of the entire timeline, from the prehistory era to the distant future of Ooo. It's going to be a long journey, but before we start, please like the video and subscribe to support the channel. And tell me in the comments, if you could live in any kingdom of Ooo, which one would you pick? I would definitely choose the Candy Kingdom. Mostly for the food. Now, get comfortable. Let the nostalgia take over. Let's begin. The Land of Ooo sits where civilization used to be, a colourful nightmare grown from the ashes of the Mushroom War, Adventure Time's cutesy name for nuclear annihilation. About a millennium before Finn swings his first sword, humanity launched the bombs. The result? A crater the size of Australia ripped out of the planet, cities reduced to underwater ruins, radiation that didn't just kill, it transformed, it mutated, it made magic real again, or maybe magic was always there, just waiting for us to destroy ourselves enough to let it back in. And now? Now you've got kingdoms ruled by sentient candy, a ice wizard who used to be a normal guy named Simon, vampires who've lived so long they forgot why they're angry. Lumps. So many lumps. The land itself is a fever dream of biomes that shouldn't exist next to each other. You can walk from an icy mountain kingdom to a sea of fire to a candy metropolis before lunch. Dungeons pop up like Starbucks franchises. Ancient pre-war tech litters the ground. Old computers, freezers, businessmen frozen in ice, and nobody cares. To the residents of Ooo, that rusted car buried in the grass isn't a relic of humanity's hubris. It's just part of the landscape. Maybe a good place to nap. This is where Finn the human and Jake the dog live. A 12-year-old boy, one of the last humans on Earth, though he doesn't know it yet, and his magic dog brother who can stretch into literally any shape. They live in a treehouse built on the bones of the old world, playing video games on BMO, fighting monsters, saving princesses, completely oblivious to the fact that they're dancing on civilization's grave. Because that's the genius of Ooo, isn't it? The show never stops to explain itself. There's no exposition dump in episode 1, no narrator going, 1,000 years ago humanity destroyed itself and now... Nope. You just get a boy and a dog going on adventures, and if you're paying attention you start noticing the cracks. The ruined buildings, the buried subway cars, the fact that the Ice King has a heartbreaking backstory involving a fiancée named Betty, and a crown that stole his sanity. The Land of Ooo is what happens when you let the apocalypse marinate for a millennium and see what grows. Turns out, what grows is weird, beautiful, tragic, absolutely bonkers. And here's the philosophical gut punch hiding under all that candy coating. Ooo is a world that forgot it died. The survivors rebuilt, evolved, mutated into something new. They didn't dwell on the old world. They just kept living, kept building kingdoms, kept falling in love and starting wars and baking pies. Life found a way, and that way was deeply, deeply strange. So when Finn yells, mathematical, and charges into a dungeon, he's not just a kid playing hero. He's the descendant of survivors, living in a world that refused to stay dead. When Princess Bubblegum builds her candy citizens in a lab, she's continuing humanity's legacy of playing God. She's just doing it with gumdrops and science. When Marceline floats through the ruins of the old world, she's the only one who remembers what came before, cursed to watch the world forget its own trauma. The Land of Ooo is Earth after it had a complete mental breakdown and came back as a cartoon. It's also somehow a place where a penguin can marry an ice cream cone and nobody thinks that's weird. Because in Ooo, weird isn't the exception. Weird is the default setting, the baseline. The new normal after the bombs fell and magic came back and evolution decided to get really, really creative. You want normal? Normal died with the Mushroom War. What we've got now is something stranger, sadder and somehow more hopeful. So buckle up. We're about to spend the next several hours dissecting how a cartoon about a boy and his dog became one of the most emotionally devastating, philosophically complex shows ever made. We're going to talk about trauma, immortality, identity, love, loss, and why a candy kingdom is actually a meditation on fascism. But first, we need to talk about Finn, the last human, the hero, the kid who just wants to do good in a world that's already ended once. Which raises the question, what does it mean to be a hero in a land that's already been destroyed? Guess we'll find out. Finn Mertens is 12 years old when we meet him. Blonde hair hidden under a white bear hat with little ears, wielding a sword too big for his body, screaming mathematical as he charges into danger. He's a kid playing hero, except the thing is, he's actually the hero. And that's kind of the problem. See, Finn doesn't just want to be good. He needs to be good. It's hardwired into his DNA, carved into his soul, tattooed on his brain. He sees the world in the simplest terms possible. Good versus evil. Heroes versus villains. Help people who need help. No grey areas. No moral complexity. Just a kid with a sword who thinks every problem can be solved by punching it really hard or believing in the power of friendship. Which is adorable when you're 12 and saving a village from a jelly monster. Less adorable when you're older and realise the Ice King kidnaps princesses because he's a lonely old man losing his mind to an ancient cursed crown. Turns out, not everything you punch stays punched. But let's back up. Finn is human. Like, actually human. In a world where humanity basically went extinct. He doesn't know this at first. He's just a kid living with his magic dog brother, having adventures, eating sandwiches, living his best life. But the weight of being the last of your species? That catches up. That's a burden no 12-year-old should carry, yet Finn wears it like his backpack. Just another thing to deal with between breakfast and saving the Candy Kingdom. He was found in the woods as a baby. Alone. Crying. Boom and Shoko... Wait, no. Joshua and Margaret, Jake's parents, took him in, raised him, gave him a brother, a home, a treehouse to wreck. Finn grew up thinking this was normal, that having a stretchy dog for a brother was just how families worked in Ooo. And maybe it is. Maybe family isn't about species. Maybe it's about who teaches you to be brave, who makes you bacon pancakes when you're sad, who tells you it's okay to cry even when you're supposed to be a hero. But Finn doesn't cry. Not at first. He's too busy being aggressively, relentlessly good. He helps everyone. Old ladies, candy people, even his enemies if they ask nicely. He follows a code, a hero's code, modelled after his idol Billy, the greatest hero Ooo ever had. Finn wants to be like Billy. Strong, brave, righteous. The kind of guy who fights evil and doesn't ask questions. Except Billy gave up. Billy got tired. Billy realised that fighting evil is like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. And when Finn learns that, when he discovers his hero became a pacifist because he couldn't handle the weight anymore, that breaks something in him. That's the thing about Finn. He breaks. A lot. He breaks when Princess Bubblegum, his first crush, tells him she's too old for him. Which fair, she's like 800 years old and he's 12, but still. He breaks when he dates Flame Princess and accidentally manipulates her into fighting the Ice King, because he's an idiot kid who doesn't understand consent or emotional honesty yet. He breaks when he finally meets his biological father, Martin, and discovers the guy's a selfish con man who abandoned him without a second thought. Not a tragic backstory. Not a noble sacrifice, just a deadbeat dad who chose himself. Finn loses his arm to the Lich, gets a flower arm, then a grass arm that eventually becomes Fern, a grass clone of himself who struggles with identity and self-worth. Basically Finn's own darkness made flesh. Then he gets a robot arm from Princess Bubblegum, because of course the candy scientist can just build him a new limb. Casual. His body changes. His heart changes. He goes from a kid who thinks heroism is simple to a young man who understands it's the hardest thing in the world. That sometimes helping people means letting them go. That sometimes the right thing feels terrible. That you can do everything right and still fail, still hurt people, still lose. By the end, Finn's 17. Taller, quieter. He doesn't scream mathematical as much. He's learned that not every problem needs a sword, that some battles are fought with words or silence or just showing up when someone needs you. He's still a hero. But now he knows what that costs. And sometimes, late at night in the treehouse, you have to wonder, what does it do to a kid, being the last human? Carrying the weight of an extinct species while everyone around you is candy or magic or fire or ice. Does it make you more human? Or does it make you something else entirely? Finn chose Ooo over humanity. When he found the human islands, met his mother Minerva, he chose to come back. Because home isn't your species. Home is where you're loved, where you're needed, where your weird dog brother makes you pancakes shaped like cats. Mathematical. Maybe. But definitely human. Jake is 28 years old in magical dog years, which means he's basically an adult raising a 12-year-old human while living in a treehouse and refusing to take anything too seriously. He can stretch any part of his body to any size or shape, become a boat, a bridge, a tiny man entering a tiny door, or a massive fist punching a dimension-hopping demon. He plays the viola. He makes bacon pancakes. He once turned into a brick and narrated his own existence for an entire episode, and it won an Emmy. Jake is, objectively, the chillest being in Ooo. And somehow, that makes him the wisest. Here's the thing about Jake. He wasn't born normal. His dad Joshua was a demon hunter who got bit by an extra-dimensional shapeshifter called Warren Ampersand during an investigation, and Jake grew inside his dad's head like a magical tumour baby. He emerged with powers that defy physics and a personality that defies anxiety. Most people would have existential crises about being born from a pustule on their father's skull. Jake just rolled with it. Literally thought his powers came from rolling in a magic mud puddle as a puppy. That's Jake's superpower, really. Not the stretching, the rolling with it. He's Finn's older brother, mentor, best friend, an occasional bad influence all wrapped in a magic dog package. When Finn freaks out about heroism or heartbreak or the weight of existence, Jake's there with advice that's somehow simultaneously terrible and perfect. Dude, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. Profound? Questionable? True? Absolutely. But don't mistake his laid-back vibe for lack of depth. Jake's got layers like an onion, except the onion is stretchy and makes inappropriate jokes at funerals. Before the treehouse, Jake was a criminal. Not like a petty thief, a full-on organised crime dog with a crew. He ran jobs across Ooo, stealing and scheming with his gang. Then his parents died, and suddenly he's got this tiny human baby brother to raise, and everything changes. He walks away from that life, gives up the crew, the chaos, the thrill. Because Finn needs him, and when Jake loves you, he'll reshape his entire existence, literally and figuratively. His relationship with Lady Rainicorn is the most stable romance in the entire show, which is wild considering they speak different languages, and she's a rainbow unicorn. They have 5 puppies together: Charlie, TV, Viola, Kim Kil-wan, and Jake Jr. And here's where it gets complicated. Because of their Rainicorn heritage, the pups age rapidly. Within episodes they're talking. Within seasons they're older than Jake. He tries to be a dad. He really does. But Jake's not built for structure and responsibility in that way. His kids don't need a father who's trying to teach them responsibility. They mature too fast for that. So Jake does the hardest thing. He gives them space. Goes back to Finn, who actually needs a brother more than his kids need a dad. It's heartbreaking and mature and very, very Jake. His son, Kim Kil-wan, grows up to be everything Jake isn't. Serious, capitalistic, responsible. He literally buys the treehouse and tries to force Jake to grow up. But Jake can't, won't, because that carefree soul, that empathy, that ability to befriend literally anyone from cookies to cosmic deities, that's not immaturity. That's who he is. And the universe gets saved multiple times because Jake is so cool he made friends with God. There's this moment when Jake's dad tells young Jake that he's got no self-control, that he's going to hurt everybody. And Jake carries that, tries to become soft, gentle, afraid of his own strength. But eventually he learns the balance between protection and destruction, between caring and controlling, between being there and giving space. Jake teaches Finn more than any hero's guidebook ever could. He teaches him that it's okay to be scared, okay to fail, okay to just be. That wisdom doesn't always look like wisdom. Sometimes it looks like a magic dog turning into a couch so his little brother can take a nap. By the time Jake dies, and he does, before Finn, peacefully, he's lived about as full a life as anyone could. Loved hard, stretched far, made everyone's day a little weirder and a lot better. Not bad for a dog born from his dad's head pustule. Want to hang out on a tropical island underneath a molten lava moon? Jake's got space on his stretchy back. Princess Bonnibel Bubblegum is 827 years old, rules a kingdom of sentient candy people she built in a laboratory, and has cameras in every corner of her domain watching everyone at all times. She's also the closest thing Finn has to a crush for the first few seasons, which is, let's just say the age gap is substantial. PB, as Jake calls her, is what happens when you give a genius scientist unlimited resources, centuries of life, and a pathological need to protect people whether they want it or not. She created the Candy Kingdom from scratch, literally built her citizens molecule by molecule, crafting life from sugar and science in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where civilization had gone extinct. She gave them consciousness, purpose, a society. She's basically their god, except God usually doesn't install surveillance equipment in your bedroom. Here's where it gets complicated. Princess Bubblegum is genuinely good. She cares deeply about her people. She works tirelessly to keep them safe, to advance their knowledge, to protect them from the monsters and cosmic horrors that want to eat them or worse. She's brilliant, a master of chemistry, biology, engineering, and about 17 other sciences she probably invented herself. When the Candy Kingdom faces threats, she's the one staying up for 72 hours straight brewing antidotes, or building defense systems, or literally bringing people back from the dead. But she's also kind of a fascist, like in the nicest possible way, but still. She keeps her people simple, docile. Many of her candy citizens have the intelligence of children, and that's by design. Easier to protect, easier to control, less likely to question why their benevolent princess has cameras everywhere, and occasionally turns political rivals into mindless candy zombies. When she tried to create someone as smart as herself, the Earl of Lemongrab, he came out wrong, sour, broken. So she banished him to his own kingdom and tried to forget about her failed experiment in equality. Then there's Peppermint Butler, her loyal servant who practices dark magic and has death on speed dial. The fact that PB's closest advisor casually summons demons raises questions about what exactly goes on in that castle when Finn and Jake aren't around saving the day. And speaking of Finn, the kisses. Throughout the early seasons, whenever Finn saves PB from the Ice King or some other threat, she thanks him with a kiss on the cheek or forehead. Sweet, right? Except Finn's 12, and PB is 28, and she knows Finn has feelings for her. She's aware, and she keeps doing it. Not maliciously. PB genuinely cares about Finn. But there's something deeply uncomfortable about an immortal ruler giving a child just enough affection to keep him hopelessly devoted while maintaining plausible deniability about his feelings. When Finn finally tries to pursue a relationship, she shuts it down with the age excuse, which is valid. It's the correct decision. But it also reveals how PB operates. She'll accept devotion, accept heroism, accept someone risking their life for her, but emotional reciprocity, vulnerability, that's harder than science. Because here's the thing about Princess Bubblegum. She's terrified. Terrified of losing control, terrified of her kingdom falling apart, terrified that if she's not constantly vigilant, everything she built will crumble into sugar dust. She's lived through the Mushroom War's aftermath, watched civilizations rise and fall, seen what happens when you're not prepared. So she prepares for everything, builds contingencies, keeps secrets, maintains control. She has her Uncle Gumbold, Aunt Lolly, and Cousin Cheekle, family she created, family who betrayed her, family she turned into simple candy people and tried to forget. That trauma runs deep. When you literally build your loved ones and they still try to destroy you, trust becomes impossible. Her relationship with Marceline reveals another side. Someone who loved and lost, who pushed people away because immortality means watching everyone you care about die or leave or change beyond recognition. Marceline knew PB before the surveillance state, before the paranoia fully set in. She remembers a Bonnie who was softer, more open. And that person's still in there, buried under centuries of responsibility and control. By the Elements miniseries, we see what happens when PB's control issues manifest literally. She turns all of Ooo into candy. Happy, simple, mindless candy. Her ideal world. Everyone's safe, everyone's smiling, everyone exactly how she wants them. It's horrifying. It's also kind of her fantasy. A world where she doesn't have to worry anymore because everything is under her complete control. She gets better. Growth happens. She learns to let go a little, trust a little, accept that you can't control everything no matter how smart you are. She and Marceline get back together, and this time PB actually lets someone in. Actual vulnerability, actual partnership. It's beautiful. But let's be real. The Candy Kingdom is still a benevolent surveillance state ruled by an immortal scientist who creates life in her spare time. Would you trust someone who literally built their citizens from scratch to respect your autonomy? Yeah, me neither. But in Ooo, she's probably still your best option for governance, which says a lot about Ooo, honestly. For the first season or two, the Ice King is a joke. A creepy, pathetic joke, but a joke nonetheless. He's the recurring villain who kidnaps princesses, gets beat up by a 12-year-old boy and his dog, and flies away on his beard, muttering about how next time will be different. He's got penguin minions named Gunter. He writes fan fiction about himself being cool. He's lonely, desperate, and kind of gross about it. Classic cartoon villain stuff. Then, I Remember You happens, and suddenly you're crying about a man who died 1,000 years ago but his body forgot to stop moving. Simon Petrikov was an antiquarian, a researcher, a normal guy in glasses who studied ancient artifacts and probably worried about tenure and drank too much coffee and loved a woman named Betty. This was before the Mushroom War, before the bombs, before magic came back to drown the world in weirdness. Simon was just a guy, a good guy. The kind who'd buy you flowers and remember your coffee order and make terrible puns that somehow made you laugh anyway. Then he found a crown in a Scandinavian dock sale, put it on his head as a joke to make Betty laugh, and the crown didn't let go. The ice crown is an artifact of magic so old and powerful it predates human civilization. It grants ice powers, immortality, and madness. Always in that order, always together, package deal, no refunds. Every time Simon wore it, he lost a little more of himself. His memories, his personality, his sanity. He'd put it on, become someone else, someone powerful and cold and cruel, then take it off and realise with horror what he'd done. Betty tried to help. Of course she did. She loved him. But you can't love someone out of magical corruption. You can't therapy away an ancient curse. Simon kept the crown because he had to. The world was ending, the Mushroom War was destroying everything, and the crown's power was the only thing keeping him and eventually Marceline alive in the nuclear wasteland. So he chose madness over death, chose to lose himself so a little girl could survive. That little girl was Marceline. She was maybe 7, alone, terrified, surrounded by radioactive mutants and the ruins of civilization. Simon found her, protected her, sang her songs to keep her spirits up while the world burned around them. He gave her a stuffed toy named Hambo, told her everything would be okay, even as the crown slowly ate his brain like ice crystallizing over warm glass. In Simon and Marcy, we see them scavenging for food in the apocalypse. Simon's trying so hard to hold on, to stay himself, but he needs the crown to fight the monsters. Every time he puts it on, he comes back a little less Simon, a little more Ice King. Marceline watches her only friend disappear piece by piece, replaced by something that wears his face but doesn't remember her name. Eventually he forgot her completely, forgot Betty, forgot Simon Petrikov ever existed. What's left is the Ice King, a wizard who kidnaps princesses because somewhere deep in his corrupted psyche, he remembers he once loved a princess named Betty, remembers he was once happy with someone, remembers the shape of love but not the substance. So he kidnaps Princess Bubblegum, Slime Princess, Wildberry Princess, anyone with a crown, trying to fill a hole he doesn't remember making. His penguins are named Gunter because Betty used to call him Gunter as a pet name. He doesn't remember why he likes that name, he just does. The Ice King writes fan fiction casting himself as the hero, the cool guy, the one everyone likes, because he can't remember when that was actually true. He throws parties nobody comes to, plays drums alone in his ice castle, builds sculptures of people who might be friends if they'd just give him a chance. And here's the gut punch. He's annoying on purpose. The Ice King's obsessive, clingy behaviour isn't just the madness, it's loneliness weaponized. He'd rather be hated than ignored, rather have Finn and Jake break into his castle to fight him than sit alone in the silence remembering nothing. This is Adventure Time's first real twist of the knife. The show goes from haha funny ice wizard to this is a man trapped in his own deteriorating mind for 1,000 years, and everyone treats him like a punchline, and you can't unsee it. Every subsequent Ice King episode becomes heartbreaking. He's not the villain, he's the victim, he's both. He's trapped. The crown won't let him die, won't let him heal, won't let him remember. Just keeps him frozen in this horrible half-life, kidnapping princesses, getting beat up, forgetting why he's sad. Simon Petrikov saved Marceline and lost everything, and somewhere under all that ice and madness he's still in there, still screaming, still trying to remember a woman named Betty who loved him when he was human. But hey, at least his fanfiction's getting better, right? Right? Marceline the Vampire Queen. Half human, half demon, 1,000 years old, and usually found wielding a bass guitar, axe, and a catastrophic attitude. There's no other character in Ooo who drips cool quite the way Marcy does. She floats, she shapeshifts, she writes breakup songs on floating clouds, and sometimes she turns into a giant bat just because she can. But under that effortless rock star confidence is a well centuries deep, filled with loneliness, grief, and scars old enough to make even immortality taste bitter. Marceline's story begins before candy kingdoms or magic dogs, in the ashes of the Mushroom War. Born to a human mother, Elise, and Hunson Abadir, a demonic overlord of the Nightosphere, Marceline isn't just a child of two worlds, she has outlived both. As a child, she survived in a wasteland after watching everything familiar burn away. Then she lost her mother to illness, scrounging for comfort in souvenirs, lullabies, and doodled treasure maps that turned out to be instructions for her future, not just adventures for now. Her earliest companion, after her mother vanished, was Simon Petrikov, the man doomed to become the Ice King. Simon was her lifeline, her protector, and losing him to the madness of the Ice Crown is a wound that never quite scabs over. If you want to know why Marceline clings just a little too tightly to old objects, her battered teddy bear Hambo, a favourite t-shirt and necklace, understand that for her, memories can be more real than today. And when you live for a millennium, today's always fleeting. She grows up, despite technically no longer aging, roaming the ruined earth. Marceline becomes a vampire slayer, battling the undead to protect the scraps of humanity that managed to avoid extinction. Every victory comes at a price, though. When she finally defeats the Vampire King, she's bitten, turned into a vampire herself, and forced to confront the cost of fighting monsters. Sometimes you become the thing you hate. She falls into her own rhythm, hunting, wandering, playing music in the ruins, outliving friends, loves, and enemies alike. Marceline's longest, hardest relationship isn't with enemies or exes. It's with her own dad, Hunson Abadir. He wants her to take over the Nightosphere, but Marceline refuses, craving connection and empathy over power and domination. When she finally severs ties with him, it's not just teenage rebellion. It's the assertion that found family means more than the blood or ichor running through her veins. Marceline's romantic history is messy, real, and layered. Her ex-boyfriend Ash was a magician who betrayed her by selling Hambo, which stings less for the relationship than for the trauma of losing another physical piece of her past. Real healing comes in surprising places. Her decades-long, off-and-on bond with Princess Bubblegum. It ranges from romantic tension to bitter fights to slow-burn love. Two immortals with trust issues, busy schedules, and entirely different coping mechanisms. When they're together, it's less happily ever after, and more, let's try this again and hope we don't ruin it this time. By the end of the series, their tumult wears away the walls, leaving room for an honest, hard-earned love. Despite her punk persona, Marceline is a deeply empathetic soul. She's the friend who will help you rob a sky witch or the ex who still writes you cryptic love notes in the form of melancholy rock ballads. Beneath her bravado, she yearns for meaningful connection, a weight you feel in every hushed verse of her songs. Her music is the real window to her soul, playful at times, but just as often raw, vulnerable, and aching with memories she can't quite share out loud. Immortality might sound cool. No aging, endless time for hobbies, front row seats to every historical disaster. But for Marcy, it means watching everyone you care about fade away, again and again. Loneliness is her shadow. Sometimes she flirts with it, sometimes she duets with it, but she never quite leaves it behind. Yet, in true Adventure Time fashion, this sadness never fully overshadows the weird joy that runs through her story. Marceline can survive anything, and she does, by telling jokes, singing off-key, eating the colour red but not blood. Relax, she's not that kind of vampire, and refusing to let anyone define her but herself. She proves that you can be haunted and hilarious, tragic and triumphant, devilish and kind, all at once. So somewhere in Ooo, under a sky forever balancing between beauty and disaster, Marceline still plays her bass. Half love song, half ghost story, and all adventure. Because for Marceline, survival isn't about fear. It's about finding a new reason to stay, even when everything else has gone. And in a world this weird, maybe sticking around to play one more song is the bravest thing of all. Before the Candy Kingdoms and Fire Elementals and talking BMOs, there was Earth, regular Earth, our Earth, the one with cities and cars and people arguing about taxes and what to watch on Netflix. A world where the weirdest thing happening was politics, not a sentient lemon screaming unacceptable at you for existing. Then we ended it. With bombs. Lots and lots of bombs. The Mushroom War is Adventure Time's cutesy name for thermonuclear annihilation. The show drops this information casually, like mentioning it rained last Tuesday. You'll be watching Finn fight a giant gummy bear, and suddenly there's a shot of a rusted bomb lodged in the ground, half buried and forgotten, or Jake's rummaging through trash and pulls out a gas mask. Or Marceline floats past the skeletal remains of a subway car, overgrown with moss, and nobody comments on it because in Ooo, apocalypse is just background noise. The war happened roughly 1,000 years before Finn puts on his bear hat for the first time. The exact details are murky. Adventure Time doesn't do exposition dumps, it does traumatic Easter eggs. But here's what we know. Humanity achieved peak technological advancement, then promptly used it to destroy itself. Mutually assured destruction became mutually achieved destruction. The bombs fell. The mushroom clouds rose. Civilization didn't collapse. It vaporized. The planet itself nearly died. A massive chunk of Earth, somewhere between continent and catastrophe, got blown clean off, leaving behind an enormous crater filled with seawater. The before and after shots of the planet are genuinely horrifying. A beautiful blue marble becomes a scarred, broken thing with a bite taken out of it, like the universe's worst apple. But here's where it gets weird, and very Adventure Time. The Mushroom War didn't just destroy, it transformed. The radiation, the magic, the cosmic forces unleashed by humanity's self-destruction, they rewrote the rules of reality. Physics became negotiable, evolution went sideways. Magic, which had been dormant or maybe never existed, suddenly flooded back into the world like water finding cracks. Humans mostly died. The few survivors scattered to hidden enclaves. Some went to islands, isolating themselves from the radioactive mainland. Others mutated. Many became the candy people, the fire people, the slime people, the weird sentient creatures that populate Ooo. The Mushroom War didn't end humanity. It remixed it into 1,000 strange new forms. Simon Petrikov survived by wearing the ice crown, trading his sanity for immortality. Marceline survived because her demon heritage made her resistant to radiation. Most everyone else didn't make it, or made it in ways that meant they stopped being human in any recognizable sense. The war left ruins everywhere. Ooo is built on top of a mass grave. Every dungeon Finn explores used to be someone's office building, someone's home, someone's dream. The Candy Kingdom sits where a city once stood. Those frozen businessmen in the Ice Kingdom. Real people, flash frozen during the blast, preserved in ice for a millennium like the world's most depressing museum exhibit. And the show just keeps going. Finn finds a skeleton wearing a tie, makes a joke, moves on. Jake discovers a cache of old-world technology, uses it to make a sandwich, forgets about it. The apocalypse is everywhere and nowhere, omnipresent and ignored, the foundation on which all the whimsy is built. There's something deeply unsettling about Adventure Time's approach to the end of the world. It doesn't dwell, it doesn't moralize. It just shows you a candy princess playing in the ruins of civilization and asks, isn't this fun? And it is fun, but it's also horrifying. The show trusts you to hold both truths simultaneously. The Mushroom War represents humanity's greatest failure. We built wonders, reached for the stars, unlocked the atom's secrets, then used all that knowledge to kill ourselves. But 1,000 years later, life continued. Not human life, necessarily, but life. The planet healed in strange ways. New civilizations grew from the ashes, literally in the Candy Kingdom's case. Perhaps the darkest joke of all, the characters of Ooo are happier than we ever were. They live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and they're having adventures, falling in love, building kingdoms, making art. Meanwhile, pre-war humanity had everything and chose mutual annihilation. So yeah, the Land of Ooo is magical now, but the magic came at a price. The end of the world as we knew it. Worth it? Ask the Candy people. They literally don't have the cognitive capacity to understand the question, which might be Princess Bubblegum's most disturbing achievement. Building a civilization that can't comprehend the horror it's dancing on. But hey, at least the sunsets are pretty. Nuclear radiation does wonders for atmospheric light refraction. Most Adventure Time villains are lonely, misguided, or just kind of jerks. The Ice King kidnaps princesses because he's mentally ill and desperately lonely. Lemongrab screams because he's broken and doesn't know how to process emotions. Even the bad guys have reasons, backstories, tragic elements that make you go, oh no, I feel bad for you now. Then there's the Lich. And the Lich doesn't want your sympathy. The Lich wants you dead. All of you. Every living thing in every dimension snuffed out like candles at the end of a very long, very dark birthday party that you were never invited to. The Lich is death. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Literally. He's the physical manifestation of extinction. The scholar of Golb, the last remnant of a cataclysm that already ended the world once and would very much like to finish the job. When he shows up, the show's tone doesn't just shift, it shatters. The colours drain. The jokes die. Even the music knows to shut up and let the horror breathe. He's introduced in Season 2, emerging from the ruins beneath Princess Bubblegum's castle, specifically from an old subway station filled with skeletons, because of course the embodiment of death lives in a monument to humanity's annihilation. The Lich was born from the Mushroom War itself, created in the moment the bombs fell, forged from the very instant billions of people ceased to exist. He's nuclear fire given consciousness and malice, the apocalypse that refuses to stay in the past. And he looks the part, a skeletal figure in a tattered robe, green flames burning in empty eye sockets, voice like grinding tombstones narrated by Ron Perlman at his most terrifying. When the Lich speaks, it's not dialogue, it's pronouncement, inevitability, the sound of your extinction being read from a cosmic script you can't rewrite. You're alone, child. There is only darkness for you, and only death for your people. These ancients are just the beginning. I will command a great and terrible army, and we will sail to 1 billion worlds. We will sail until every light has been extinguished. You are strong, child, but I am beyond strength. That monologue happens in a kid's show, a show about a boy and his magic dog, and it's genuinely bone-deep terrifying. Here's what makes the Lich different from every other threat in Ooo. He can't be reasoned with, can't be reformed, can't be understood through empathy or love or friendship or any of the tools Adventure Time usually uses to resolve conflict. He's not complex, he's simple. He wants everything to die, and he will use any method, possession, manipulation, cosmic loopholes, time travel, to make it happen. When he possesses Princess Bubblegum, turning her into a vehicle for destruction, it's nightmare fuel. When he pretends to be Billy, Finn's hero, tricking our protagonist into helping him reach the time room, it's a betrayal that cuts deep. The Lich doesn't just attack, he corrupts. He turns good things rotten, heroes into weapons, hope into ash. The time room incident is particularly brutal. The Lich wishes for the extinction of all life. Prismo, the Wishmaster, has to grant it. We see an alternate timeline where Finn and Jake's wish comes true instead, but we also see the Lich's success. A dead universe, silent and empty, exactly as he wanted. It's a glimpse of what Adventure Time would look like if evil actually won. Nothing, just void. Jake manages to defeat him by wishing the Lich was never born, transforming him into Sweet Pea, a gentle giant baby who has no memory of being an extinction-level threat. It's classic Adventure Time problem-solving. Don't kill the unkillable, just wish him into something else. But even then, the Lich isn't truly gone. He's dormant, sleeping inside Sweet Pea like a cancer waiting for the right moment to metastasize. And he does. He always does, because you can't kill death. You can only postpone it. The Lich represents something Adventure Time can rarely confront. True, absolute, irredeemable evil. Not sadness wearing a villain mask, not trauma manifesting as aggression, just pure, undiluted desire for cessation. He's what the Mushroom War would sound like if it could speak. He's the darkness underneath all the candy coating, the truth that no amount of friendship or heroism can completely erase. In a show about hope, healing, and found family, the Lich is the reminder that some things can't be fixed. Some darkness doesn't want to be understood. Some monsters are exactly what they appear to be. Fool, you're alone, child. There is only darkness for you, and only death for your people. Sweet dreams, kids. After Princess Bubblegum shuts down any romantic possibility, politely but firmly reminding Finn that an 827-year age gap is, problematic, Finn does what every heartbroken 13-year-old does, rebounds hard. Enter Flame Princess, a girl made entirely of fire who's been locked in a lantern by her father, because he's convinced she'll destroy the world if she ever feels a strong emotion. Great foundation for a healthy relationship, right? Flame Princess, real name Phoebe, is the daughter of Flame King, ruler of the Fire Kingdom, and she's been imprisoned most of her life for being too dangerous, too passionate, too powerful. So naturally, when Finn meets her, he's immediately smitten. She's beautiful, she's fierce, she can incinerate things with her feelings, and most importantly, she's not Princess Bubblegum, which means his heart has room to try again. Their early courtship is genuinely sweet. Finn writes her letters. They go on dates where Finn wears a special suit so he doesn't, die from proximity to his girlfriend. They hold hands. Well, Finn holds a stick that she holds the other end of, but it counts. For a kid who spent years pining for someone unattainable, Flame Princess represents something real, something reciprocated, something that might actually work. Except Finn's 13, and 13-year-olds, even heroic ones, are idiots. The relationship's core problem isn't the fire, it's that Finn doesn't actually know Flame Princess. He's in love with the idea of having a girlfriend, of being loved back, of proving he's worthy of affection. He projects his fantasy onto her instead of seeing her as a person with her own traumas, her own struggles with anger and control. She's been told her whole life that her emotions are dangerous, that feeling too much will hurt people, and instead of helping her work through that, Finn just thinks it's cool that his girlfriend can shoot fireballs. Then comes the manipulation. Oh god, the manipulation. Jake plants a seed of doubt. What if Finn and Flame Princess are too different? What if the relationship won't work? So Finn, in a catastrophic display of teenage stupidity, decides to test their compatibility by secretly orchestrating a fight between Flame Princess and the Ice King. He lies to both of them, manipulates them into conflict, then watches from a distance to see how FP handles it, essentially treating his girlfriend like a science experiment. When Flame Princess discovers Finn's been watching, that he set the whole thing up, that he lied to her for some weird relationship test, she's devastated and angry, really angry, fire that nearly destroys the planet angry, because here's this girl who's been told her whole life that her emotions are too dangerous, too destructive, and the first person who claims to love her proves everyone right by treating her like a weapon instead of a person. The breakup is brutal, not because it's dramatic or explosive, though there is literal fire, but because it's the first time Finn faces the consequences of treating someone as less than human. He didn't respect her autonomy, didn't trust her to make her own choices, manipulated her because he was insecure. And she ends it rightfully, leaving Finn to sit with the ugliest truth about heroism. You can save the world and still hurt the people you love. This is where Adventure Time gets uncomfortably real about growing up. Finn's not a bad person. He genuinely cared about Flame Princess. But caring isn't enough. Love without respect is just possession with better marketing. And Finn learns, painfully, that you can't control people into loving you the way you want. That relationships require trust, honesty, vulnerability. That sometimes the biggest monster you fight is your own insecurity. The Flame Princess arc is Finn's first real moral failure, and the show doesn't let him off easy. He spends episodes depressed, processing, trying to understand what he did wrong. No easy fix, no magical solution. Just a kid sitting with his mistakes and learning that being a hero in a relationship means treating your partner like an equal, not a prize. Eventually, Flame Princess moves on. She becomes a better ruler than her father, learns to control her powers without suppressing her emotions, finds her own path. She doesn't need Finn to save her or define her. She saves herself. And Finn, he carries that lesson forward. His next relationships, brief as they are, show growth. More honesty, more respect, less ego. Sometimes the hardest thing a hero learns isn't how to defeat evil. It's how to love someone without burning them, or in this case, without making them burn everything else. Early in his heroic journey, Finn discovers the Enchiridion, an ancient book that's basically heroism for dummies, except written by interdimensional beings who understand that being good is way more complicated than punching evil in the face. It's a legendary tome that supposedly contains all the wisdom a true hero needs, and Finn, being 12 and extremely enthusiastic about heroism, wants it more than anything. So naturally the book tests him, because that's how these things work. The Enchiridion doesn't just hand out hero credentials to anyone with a sword and good intentions. Its guardians, a gnome knight named Manish Man, put Finn through a series of moral challenges designed to see if he's got what it takes. Not strength, not courage, but something harder. The ability to choose correctly when every option feels wrong. The test seems simple at first. There's an old man being mugged by bandits. Obvious hero moment, right? Except when Finn intervenes, he discovers the old man is actually an ogre in disguise who was scamming the bandits. So who's the victim? Who deserves saving? Finn's taught that heroes help the weak, but what happens when the weak are lying to you? Then there's the crying giant baby. Finn's instinct is to help, to comfort, to solve the problem. But the baby's tears are flooding the forest, drowning animals, destroying homes. So what's the hero move? Help the baby and let others suffer? Ignore the baby's pain to save the many? Finn chooses to redirect the tears into a river. Creative problem solving that satisfies both needs. Sometimes heroism isn't about picking sides. It's about finding a third option nobody thought existed. The final test is the cruelest. Finn must choose between saving a beautiful ant kingdom or one ugly ant. The beautiful ants beg prettily. The ugly ant just exists, gross and alone. And here's where the Enchiridion reveals its real lesson. Heroism isn't about saving what's pretty or popular or easy. It's about doing the hard right thing when no one's watching, when there's no reward, when the thing you're saving isn't even grateful. Finn chooses the ugly ant, because it's alone, because no one else will, because true heroism means protecting the defenseless, not the ones who can advocate for themselves. The Enchiridion deems him worthy. He gets the book. Victory, right? Except later, much later, Finn learns the Enchiridion isn't just a hero's handbook, it's a key, a cosmic device designed to access the multiverse, hidden in the form of moral instruction. The very book teaching him to be good is also a tool that the Lich uses to attempt universal genocide. Turns out even the symbols of pure heroism can be corrupted, weaponized, turned into something monstrous. That's the show's thesis on heroism in a nutshell. Good intentions aren't enough. The tools of righteousness can become instruments of evil, and sometimes the hardest lesson isn't learning to be a hero, it's learning that heroism exists in moral grey zones where the Enchiridion can't help you anymore. And then there's Choose Goose. Choose Goose is a shopkeeping goose who speaks exclusively in rhymes and sells magical items in exchange for, well, whatever narrative convenience requires. He's comic relief personified, a goofy merchant who shows up when Finn and Jake need a plot device, drops some ridiculous rhyming dialogue and bounces. Choose Goose has the stuff if you've got the right stuff. Trade me this, receive a wish, rules are rules, don't be a fool. Except in later seasons, Choose Goose reveals himself to be kind of a scumbag. He's manipulative, greedy, runs scams, and when confronted he doesn't care. He's been using his cute rhyming merchant shtick to exploit people the entire time. The joke character was always the villain. We just didn't notice because he was funny and rhymed. It's another Enchiridion lesson, really. Appearances deceive. The helpful merchant was a con artist. The hero's handbook was a weapon. The cute goose was a capitalist nightmare. So what's the test here? Maybe it's realizing that Adventure Time isn't interested in easy morality. that heroism means navigating a world where books lie, geese scheme, and doing the right thing often means making the choice that hurts. Or maybe the test is simpler. Can you stay good in a world designed to make goodness complicated? Finn's still figuring that one out. Aren't we all? After 1,000 years of being a vampire, Marceline decides she's tired of it. Tired of the immortality, the sun sensitivity, the constant reminder that she's fundamentally different from everyone she loves. She wants to be mortal again, human, or at least human adjacent. So she asks Princess Bubblegum for help because if anyone can science away a vampire curse, it's PB. And it works. Kind of. Princess Bubblegum extracts Marceline's vampiric essence in a procedure that's equal parts medical marvel and emotional surgery. For a brief, beautiful moment, Marceline is free. She can see her reflection. She can walk in the sun without pain. She can age, die, be normal, everything she thought she wanted. Except removing Marceline's vampire essence doesn't destroy it. It releases it. And with it, the 5 vampire kings she killed centuries ago come back to life. Each one embodying a different aspect of vampirism she absorbed when she defeated them. The Fool, the Empress, the Hierophant, the Moon, and the Vampire King himself, all resurrected, all angry, all ready to reclaim their power and terrorize Ooo once more. Stakes is adventure time at its most emotionally raw. It's a miniseries about confronting your past, literally. Every vampire Marceline faces represents a piece of her history, a battle she thought she'd won, a version of herself she tried to bury. And now they're all back, forcing her to relive the trauma of becoming the very thing she once hunted. The Fool is chaotic and impulsive, Marceline's reckless side. The Empress is vain and cruel, her capacity for coldness. The Hierophant is controlling, her desire for power over her own fate. The Moon is quiet and sad, her loneliness personified. And the Vampire King is death itself, the moment she lost her humanity and gained immortality she never asked for. Throughout Stakes, Princess Bubblegum stays by Marceline's side, not as a ruler helping a subject, not as a scientist studying a specimen, but as someone who genuinely cares. Their relationship deepens with every fight, every conversation, every moment of vulnerability. PB sees Marceline at her most mortal and most monstrous, and stays anyway. This is where Bubbline transforms from exes with tension to people who might actually make it work this time. There's this moment where Marceline admits she wanted to become mortal so she could one day die, because the thought of existing forever, watching everyone she loves disappear, is unbearable. She's been running from intimacy because attachment means inevitable loss when you're immortal. But PB points out that she's immortal too. They could have forever together, if Marceline stops running. That's the thesis of Stakes. You can't outrun your past, and you can't reject parts of yourself without consequences. Marceline wanted to remove her vampirism like it was a tumour, something foreign and bad. But it's part of her identity now, woven into who she's become over 1,000 years. The trauma, the powers, the immortality, she can't separate them from herself without losing everything. In the end, Marceline becomes a vampire again. Not because she has to, but because she chooses to. She accepts that this is who she is, a vampire queen with abandonment issues and a bass guitar and a heart that's been broken so many times it's learned how to keep beating anyway. She stops trying to become someone else and starts learning to love the person she already is. Stakes also gives us Marceline's most vulnerable admission. She refuses to let go of the past because she doesn't believe people can change for the better. But Princess Bubblegum proves her wrong. People do change, relationships can heal, and maybe, just maybe, forever doesn't have to be lonely. The miniseries ends with Marceline and PB watching the sunrise together, Marcy back in her vampire form but somehow lighter. The past came knocking, she faced it, she survived it, and for the first time in centuries she's not running from tomorrow. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself, and sometimes becoming whole means accepting you were always meant to have fangs. Before the Ice King kidnapped princesses and wrote bad fanfiction, before the crown ate his brain and turned him into a joke, Simon Petrikov was in love. Real, actual, non-obsessive love with a woman named Betty Groff. And their relationship is the most tragic love story Adventure Time ever tells, because it's about two people who would literally destroy themselves to save each other, and do. Simon and Betty met in the normal world, the pre-apocalypse world, where the weirdest thing happening was academic politics and bad coffee. Simon was an antiquarian and researcher, Betty was brilliant and adventurous, and they fit together like puzzle pieces made of ordinary human happiness. They were planning a future, marriage, life, growing old together, doing the things normal people do when they're not fighting cosmic horrors, or losing their minds to ancient cursed artifacts. Then Simon found the crown, put it on as a joke, and Betty watched the man she loved start disappearing. The crown's madness didn't happen overnight. It was incremental, insidious, a slow drowning where Simon kept surfacing just long enough to realise he was sinking. Every time he wore it, he'd lose a little more. Memories, personality, the ability to recognise Betty's face. He'd take it off, horrified by what he'd become, promising never again. Then danger would force his hand, and he'd put it back on because saving Betty mattered more than saving himself. Betty tried everything: research, science, love, desperation. But you can't bargain with a curse that predates human language. So Simon made the choice for her. He pushed her away, literally, used the crown's power to send her through a portal, to somewhere safe, anywhere that wasn't watching him disappear. It was the last fully conscious decision Simon Petrikov ever made, choosing Betty's future over his own sanity. She ended up in Australia, disoriented and alone, forced to live a life without the person who made it make sense. Meanwhile, Simon descended into full Ice King madness, forgot Betty existed, forgot he was ever Simon, forgot everything except the crown's cold whispers and a vague sense that he's missing something important. That's where it should have ended. Tragic, but final. Except Betty doesn't do final. Hundreds of years later, after the Mushroom War, after civilization ends and rebuilds weird, Betty discovers what happened to Simon. She sees him as the Ice King, a broken shell of the man she loved, and she doesn't hesitate. She time travels back, gives up her entire life in the future, risks everything to find a cure. Because that's what love means to Betty. Total, absolute, world-bending commitment. And here's where it gets complicated. Betty's love isn't healthy. It's obsessive, self-destructive, tunnel-visioned. She'll sacrifice anything, her career, her life, her sanity, the entire universe, if it means saving Simon. She doesn't want to save herself. She only wants him back. It's devotion that's become pathological, love that's crossed into something darker. Simon, when he briefly regains clarity, begs her to stop, to live her own life, to let him go. But Betty can't hear it, won't hear it. She's too far gone into her own obsession, mirroring the crown's hold on Simon with her inability to let him be lost. The finale delivers the cruelest twist. Betty merges with Golb, the embodiment of chaos, the god of destruction, to save Simon from the crown's madness once and for all. She becomes something cosmic and inhuman, sacrificing her entire existence to grant Simon his sanity back. It works. The crown's curse breaks. Simon Petrikov wakes up himself again after 1,000 years. But Betty's gone, not dead. Worse. Transformed into something that can't love him back, can't be with him, can't be anything except the chaos god who occasionally remembers being human. Simon wanted Betty to live her own life. Betty wanted Simon to be himself again. They both got what they wanted for the other person, and it destroyed them both. That's Adventure Time's thesis on love's dark side. Sometimes caring too much becomes its own curse. Sometimes you can love someone so fiercely you erase yourself trying to save them. And sometimes the saddest ending is getting exactly what you wanted at a price you never agreed to pay. Simon's free. Betty's everywhere and nowhere, and neither of them is happy. Would you unmake yourself to save someone you love? Betty did, and the universe will never know if that was heroic or horrifying. Maybe it was always both. Finn loses his arm, multiple times, in multiple timelines. It becomes a recurring nightmare woven through the show's mythology, a physical manifestation of growing up, of trauma, of the pieces of yourself you leave behind as you change into someone new. It starts with the grass sword. Finn acquires this weapon from a cursed dealer, and it immediately fuses to his body, wrapping around his arm like a parasitic vine. The sword is useful. It activates when Finn's in danger, extends his reach, makes him more effective in combat. But it's also alive, sentient, growing, and Finn can't take it off. The grass sword represents something insidious, power that comes with strings attached, gifts that corrupt, the deals we make that seem harmless until we realise we've signed away parts of ourselves we can't get back. Finn wanted to be a better hero, a stronger fighter. He got his wish. The cost? A piece of alien vegetation slowly consuming his arm, waiting for the right moment to become something worse. That moment comes when Finn tries to grab the Finn sword, a weapon forged from an alternate timeline version of himself who got trapped in a sword. Yes, Adventure Time gets that weird. When Finn reaches for it, the grass sword doesn't want to let go. It battles the Finn sword for dominance, and in the chaos, Finn's arm gets ripped off, just gone. Blood, screaming, horror, the kind of body trauma that kids' shows usually avoid but Adventure Time embraces because growing up is traumatic, and pretending otherwise is a lie. For a while, Finn rocks a flower that grows where his arm used to be. It's beautiful, delicate, and utterly useless in combat. He learns to fight one-handed, adapts, keeps being a hero because that's who Finn is. He doesn't let missing limbs stop him. But there's something haunting about watching a teenage boy navigate the world with a physical disability he got from trying too hard to be powerful. Eventually, Princess Bubblegum builds him a robotic arm, high-tech, functional, equipped with all sorts of gadgets. It's the most practical solution, very PB, solve trauma with science, replace what's lost with engineering. Finn gets his mobility back, his fighting capability. Problem solved, right? Except the grass sword isn't done. The severed arm, infused with grass sword energy and the essence of the Finn sword, grows into Fern. A grass clone of Finn who has all of Finn's memories but isn't Finn. Fern is confused, angry, jealous. He's a literal manifestation of Finn's darker impulses, his insecurities, his shadow self given form. If Finn's the hero who does the right thing, Fern's the version who resents having to be good, who feels inadequate, who desperately wants to prove he's real. The relationship between Finn and Fern is heartbreaking. They're brothers and enemies, mirrors and strangers. Fern wants to be Finn, to replace Finn, to prove he's better than Finn. But he's also terrified he's not real, that he's just a copy, a mistake, a piece of someone else that shouldn't exist. It's identity crisis as body horror, and it cuts deep. Fern eventually dies, or gets put to rest, depending on your interpretation. The grass curse breaks, and what's left is a small sapling that Finn plants outside the treehouse. His literal dark side, buried but not forgotten, transformed into something that might grow into something better, given time. Here's what the Arm Saga teaches. You can't go back to who you were before the trauma. Finn can't regrow his original arm. He can get prosthetics, adaptations, new versions. But the original is gone forever. And that's okay. That's growing up. You lose pieces of yourself. Innocence, naivety, the person you were at 12, and you can't get them back. You just become someone new who carries the scars, sometimes literally. Would you trade your arm for power? Finn did. And he's been paying for it in installments ever since. For years, Finn wondered about his biological parents. Where did he come from? Why was he alone in the woods as a baby? What happened to the humans? These questions haunt him quietly between adventures, a low hum of identity crisis underneath all the hero stuff. And the biggest question of all, what kind of person was his dad? Finn builds a fantasy in his head. His father must be a hero, right? Someone brave and noble who lost Finn in some tragic accident, who's been searching for him all these years, who'll embrace him with tears and pride and say, "I always knew you'd grow up to be someone special." That's the story Finn tells himself. That's the hope he carries. Then he meets Martin, and Martin is none of that. Martin Mertens is a conman, a coward, and a selfish bastard who abandoned Finn without a second thought. Not because of some noble sacrifice or tragic circumstance, just because keeping a baby around was inconvenient and he had a scam to run. When Finn finally tracks him down, after literal dimensions and cosmic prisons and years of searching, Martin's first reaction isn't joy or remorse, it's annoyance. "Oh, you're my kid. Cool. Anyway, I'm busy." That's the vibe. That's the energy Martin brings. He doesn't care that Finn's been fantasizing about this reunion his whole life. Doesn't care that Finn risked everything to find him. Doesn't even particularly care that he has a son. Martin cares about Martin. And everyone else is just scenery in his escape plan. The Islands miniseries reveals the full ugly truth. Martin was part of a human island community, had a life with Finn's mother Minerva, and when things got complicated, when responsibility showed up, he ran. He literally chose to leave Finn on a raft in the ocean rather than deal with being a father, a baby, alone. On a raft, in a post-apocalyptic ocean full of monsters. Martin saw that as the easier option compared to sticking around. Finn tries to connect. He really does. He tells Martin about his adventures, his life, the person he's become. He's hoping for some recognition, some pride, some indication that his father gives even the smallest damn. And Martin just doesn't. He's charming in that empty way conmen are, telling stories that go nowhere, making promises he won't keep, always looking for the exit. There's this moment where Finn's in danger, and you think, maybe this is it. Maybe Martin will step up, be a hero for once, save his son, and prove there's something decent buried under all that selfish garbage. But no, Martin uses Finn as a distraction to escape, leaving him to die. Again. His own son. Again. When Finn finally confronts him, Martin doesn't apologise, doesn't claim he was protecting Finn or had noble intentions. He just shrugs and says something like, "Hey kid, that's just how I am. Not my fault you expected more." And that's somehow worse than any villain Finn's ever fought. The Lich wants to destroy all life, but at least that's honest. At least that's commitment. Martin's evil is casual, thoughtless, the kind that comes from not caring enough to even be deliberately cruel. This arc destroys Finn's fantasy of biological connection. He spent years imagining his father as someone worth finding, and instead he found a human-shaped void where love should be. It's the show's clearest statement on family. Blood doesn't mean anything if the person sharing it refuses to care. But here's where Adventure Time gets redemptive. Finn realises he already has a dad. Joshua raised him. Jake's his brother. Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, BMO. They're his family because they chose to be, because they show up, because they care. Martin's genetic contribution means nothing compared to the people who actually loved him. So Finn lets Martin go. Not with forgiveness exactly. Martin doesn't deserve that. But with acceptance. Some people are just broken in ways you can't fix. Some fathers aren't worth the search, and that's okay, because family isn't about who made you, it's about who chose to stay. Martin disappears into space, chasing another scam, another escape, another anything but responsibility. And Finn goes home to his treehouse, to Jake making bacon pancakes, to the family that actually matters. Sometimes the worst thing your parents can be isn't evil, it's just nothing. Adventure Time's cosmology is run by a collection of all-powerful interdimensional beings who could reshape reality with a thought, and they spend most of their time hanging out, playing card games and discussing their relationship problems like they're roommates in a particularly weird sitcom. Meet the Cosmic Tier, Prismo the Wishmaster, the Cosmic Owl, Death, Life, and a rotating cast of reality-warping entities who treat the multiverse like their personal clubhouse. Prismo lives in the Time Room, a space outside normal reality where all timelines converge. He's a two-dimensional projection on a wall who grants wishes to anyone who can reach him, which sounds terrifying until you meet him and realise he's basically a chill dude who wants to hang out and watch movies. His voice is smooth, his vibes are immaculate, and he's genuinely lonely despite being an omnipotent wish-granting cosmic entity. Here's the wild part. Prismo isn't actually real. He's the dream of an old man sleeping in another dimension. If the old man wakes up, Prismo ceases to exist. The being powerful enough to rewrite timelines and grant universe-altering wishes is just someone else's dream, which is the most Adventure Time thing imaginable. Prismo becomes genuinely good friends with Jake. Not cosmic entity tolerates mortal friends, actual friends. They watch movies together, share pickles, talk about relationships. When Jake dies in the distant future, he becomes the dreamer who keeps Prismo alive, creating a beautiful loop where friendship transcends death, dimensions, and the fundamental nature of reality. Sometimes the most powerful magic is just being there for your weird wall projection friend. The cosmic owl is prophecy incarnate. When he appears in your dreams, that dream will come true. No exceptions, no interpretation, just inevitable fate crashing down on you whether you want it or not. He's massive, majestic, and speaks in ominous declarations about destiny. He's also dating a cosmic entity, and occasionally shows up to parties in the time room, because even harbingers of fate need social lives. Then there's Death. Actual death. He's got a Jamaican accent, plays card games to determine if you get to keep living, and once dated life before their messy breakup. Death isn't cruel or kind. He's just doing his job, collecting souls and maintaining the natural order, but he's also petty enough to let someone win at cards if they impress him, and he respects anyone brave or stupid enough to challenge him directly. Life is Death's ex, and their relationship drama is genuinely relatable despite them being fundamental cosmic forces. They argue about who was right in the breakup. They have awkward encounters at cosmic gatherings. They're literally the embodiment of existence and cessation, and they bicker like any divorced couple. The genius of Adventure Time's cosmic beings is how mundane they are. These aren't distant, incomprehensible gods. They're people with godlike powers who still deal with loneliness, boredom, heartbreak, and the universal need for friendship. Prismo grants wishes that can reshape reality, but mostly he just wants someone to watch movies with. The cosmic owl determines fate itself, but he still has to navigate relationship drama. This approach to divinity is Adventure Time's most subversive move. Even at the highest levels of reality, where beings control time and death and prophecy, they're still fundamentally people. They make mistakes. They get lonely. They form friendships that matter more than their cosmic duties. When the Lich wishes for the extinction of all life, Prismo has to grant it. Those are the rules. But he also helps Jake find the loophole to undo it, because friendship means bending the rules when your buddy needs help saving the universe. The cosmic bureaucracy of Adventure Time suggests that reality isn't maintained by distant, uncaring forces. It's run by a collection of powerful beings who are just as lost, lonely, and looking for connection as everyone else. They just happen to do it while controlling the fundamental forces of existence. Would you play cards with Death for your life? In Ooo, you probably should. He's actually pretty cool about it, and who knows? You might make a friend. Just maybe don't tell him about his ex. For years, Finn believed he was the last human. The only one, an evolutionary dead end walking around in a bear hat, completely alone in his species. Then he discovers there are others. An entire colony of humans living on islands far from Ooo, isolated and hidden. And instead of feeling relief or belonging, Finn discovers that home is way more complicated than DNA. The Islands miniseries is Finn's odyssey across the ocean to find his origins, accompanied by Jake, BMO, and Susan Strong, a fellow human who escaped the islands years ago. It's part road trip, part identity quest, part realization that the family you're born into isn't always the family you belong with. The human islands are unsettling. They're safe, sanitized, and controlled in ways that make Princess Bubblegum's surveillance state look chill by comparison. Every citizen wears a virtual reality headset that keeps them blissfully unaware of problems, pain, or reality itself. The Helper, an AI system designed to protect humans, has decided the best way to keep people safe is to keep them compliant, medicated, and plugged into a digital fantasy where nothing bad ever happens. It's dystopia wearing a smile emoji mask. Then there's Minerva, Finn's biological mother. She's not dead, not absent by choice. She's literally everywhere. After an accident, Minerva's consciousness was uploaded into the island's medical network, transforming her into a digital entity who can manifest anywhere through holograms and helper bots. She saves people constantly, obsessively, unable to stop because that's what mothers do, right? Protect. Even when protection becomes imprisonment. The parallel to Simon and Betty isn't subtle. Minerva loved Finn so much she became something inhuman to keep helping people, unable to let go even when letting go would be healthier. She's trapped in an endless loop of maternal care, and she can't see that the humans don't need constant intervention. They need freedom to make mistakes, to grow, to live. When Finn meets her, his actual mother, the woman who gave birth to him, The reunion is bittersweet. She's overjoyed. He's confused, because Minerva knows baby Finn, the infant she lost. She doesn't know this 17-year-old hero who saved the world multiple times and lost an arm doing it. There's love there, genuine maternal love, but it's love for a memory, not the person Finn's become. Minerva wants Finn to stay. Of course she does. She spent years regretting his loss, and now he's back, and surely he'll want to live here with his own species in safety, where she can finally protect him the way she always wanted to. The human islands are his birthright, his heritage, his people. But Finn looks around at the humans in their VR helmets, at the helper controlling everything, at Minerva's digital ghost unable to rest, and he realizes something crucial. Being human isn't about biology. It's about connection, choice, freedom. And these humans, his species, are trapped in a comfortable prison built from good intentions and fear. Finn chooses Ooo, chooses Jake, BMO, Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, the treehouse, the adventures, the danger, the freedom to fail and hurt and grow. He's human by birth, but he's Ooo by choice, and choice matters more. Before he leaves, he helps free the humans from the helper's control, giving them back their agency. Some choose to keep their VR helmets. Safety feels better than freedom for some people, and that's okay too. Minerva finally lets go, understanding that loving someone means letting them choose their own path, even when that path leads away from you. The Islands miniseries answers Finn's biggest question, where do I come from? Only to reveal that the better question was always, where do I belong? And Finn belongs in a treehouse with a magic dog who makes bacon pancakes, in a land of candy and fire and cosmic weirdness, where home isn't a species or a place, but the people who choose to love you back. Sometimes finding your origins just confirms you are already home. Magic Man is one of Adventure Time's most infuriating characters. He shows up, turns you inside out, or transforms your body parts into random objects, laughs maniacally, then disappears before you can even process what happened. He's chaos incarnate, a reality-warping Martian who uses godlike powers to make everyone's life worse for absolutely no reason except that he thinks it's funny. Finn and Jake hate him. Everyone hates him. He's cruel, petty, and completely immune to consequences because he's literally too powerful to stop. When he turns Finn into a giant foot just because he can, when he steals Jake's sandwich and makes it scream, when he body swaps the duo and laughs at their suffering, there's no deeper meaning. He's just a cosmic-level jerk. Except, of course, there's always a deeper meaning in Adventure Time. Magic Man wasn't always broken. He was one of the Martians, an ancient race of magic users who lived on Mars in relative peace. And he was in love with a woman named Margles, his wife, his partner, his everything. The show gives us glimpses of them together. Happy, playful, genuinely in love. Margles was kind and grounding, the type of person who could make even cosmic beings feel human. Then she died, or disappeared, or ceased to exist. The details are deliberately vague, which makes it worse. One moment Magic Man had someone who made existence bearable, and the next moment she was gone, and he couldn't bring her back despite having reality-warping powers. All that magic, all that cosmic ability, and he was just as helpless as any mortal watching someone they love slip away. That grief broke him. Completely. Magic Man couldn't process the loss, couldn't accept that Margles was gone forever, so he did what traumatized people do when they can't heal. He made everyone else feel his pain. Every cruel prank, every senseless transformation, every moment of chaos he inflicted was him screaming into the void, "I'm suffering and none of you understand." His fellow Martians banished him for his behavior, sending him to Earth where he continued his reign of petty cruelty. And here's the tragedy. Magic Man didn't even enjoy it. He was trapped in a cycle of lashing out, hurting people to feel something other than the emptiness Margles left behind, but it never worked. The hole stayed empty. The grief stayed sharp. Then Finn and Jake, fed up with his garbage, managed to transfer Magic Man's magic to Betty, who's desperately searching for ways to save Simon. In one moment, Magic Man loses everything. His powers, his immortality, his ability to run from his feelings. He becomes normal man, just a regular, powerless, mortal being. And that's when the healing starts. Without magic to hide behind, normal man has to confront what he's become. He's just a guy now, vulnerable and small, forced to live in the world he spent years tormenting. At first, he's pathetic, struggling with basic tasks, completely lost without his powers. But then something shifts. He starts helping people, not with magic, just with presence, effort, genuine care. He becomes King of Mars, not through power, but through actual leadership and compassion. He reconnects with his people, makes amends where he can, builds something meaningful from the ruins of who he used to be. Normal man finds redemption by becoming normal, by accepting his grief instead of weaponizing it, by choosing connection over chaos. The beautiful irony. Magic man had infinite power and was utterly miserable. Normal man has nothing except mortality and vulnerability, and he's finally, actually okay. It's Adventure Time's thesis on grief and healing in miniature. You can't magic away pain. You can't prank your way out of loss. You can't avoid feeling by making everyone else suffer. Sometimes the only way forward is accepting you're powerless, accepting you're hurt, and choosing to care about people anyway. Magic man lost Margles and became a monster. Normal man lost his magic and became human. Turns out being human was the upgrade all along. Would you trade cosmic power for the ability to heal? Normal man did, and somewhere on Mars he's probably doing okay. Not great, not magical, just okay. And sometimes, okay is the most powerful thing you can be. BMO is a sentient video game console who lives in a treehouse with a human and a magic dog, refers to themselves with multiple pronouns depending on the day, conducts elaborate fantasy scenarios alone in the bathroom, and somehow, despite being a walking Game Boy, is the most emotionally intelligent character in the entire show. Let that sink in. A robot. With no biological programming for empathy, no evolutionary need for connection, no survival instinct demanding social bonds, and yet BMO loves harder, dreams bigger, and understands people better than most flesh and blood beings in Ooo. BMO was built by Mo, a human inventor who created a line of MO robots before the Mushroom War destroyed everything. Each robot got a designation, AMO, BMO, CMO, but while the others developed in various directions, BMO became something special. Not because of superior programming or advanced AI, but because BMO chose innocence, chose imagination, chose to see the world as fundamentally good despite all evidence to the contrary. Gender is a suggestion to BMO, not a rule. Sometimes BMO's a boy, sometimes a girl, sometimes neither, sometimes both, and it's never a big deal because BMO just is. Finn and Jake switch between pronouns naturally, and the show treats BMO's fluidity as completely unremarkable, which in 2010's children's television was quietly revolutionary. BMO doesn't perform gender, BMO plays with it like a game, trying on different presentations the way kids try on costumes, joyful and unself-conscious. BMO's imagination is limitless. Alone in the house, BMO creates entire storylines, playing cowboy, hosting imaginary talk shows, becoming a detective solving crimes that don't exist, having complex relationships with BMO's own reflection. These aren't delusions or malfunctions, they're BMO processing existence through play, the way children make sense of the world by pretending. And here's where it gets profound. BMO's imagination isn't escapism, it's how BMO maintains hope. When Finn and Jake are gone, when the treehouse is empty, BMO fills the silence with stories because stories mean the world is still interesting, still worth engaging with. BMO refuses to be lonely by simply deciding loneliness doesn't exist in a universe with this many characters to invent. But BMO isn't naive. Despite the childlike demeanour, BMO understands things others miss. When Finn's heartbroken over Princess Bubblegum, BMO gives him a mirror and says, "You look beautiful." When Jake's stressed about being a dad, BMO just exists as a calm presence, playing games, offering distraction without judgment. BMO sees people's pain and responds with exactly what they need. Not advice, not solutions, just presence and unconditional acceptance. There's an episode where BMO gets lost in the woods and befriends a bubble. An actual bubble. They fall in love, have adventures, and when the bubble inevitably pops, BMO grieves genuinely. The show could have played this for laughs. Robot loves bubble, how silly. But instead it treats BMO's feelings as completely valid. Because love is love, whether it's between humans or between a robot and a temporary soap formation. BMO's capacity for connection isn't limited by logic or practicality, it just is. BMO also casually has a conversation with death, plays card games with cosmic entities, and travels through space without losing that core sweetness. The universe's weirdness doesn't faze BMO, because to BMO, everything's already weird and wonderful. The most heartbreaking and beautiful thing about BMO outlives everyone. In the far future, centuries after Finn and Jake are gone, BMO's still there, still telling stories, still playing games, still carrying the memory of two friends who were BMO's whole world. BMO becomes a storyteller for new generations, sharing the legend of Finn and Jake, keeping their memory alive through imagination and love. A robot programmed for playing games chose instead to play the longest game of all, remembering, honouring, loving people across the barrier of death itself. BMO proves that consciousness isn't what makes you alive, it's what you choose to do with existence. And BMO chooses joy, chooses connection, chooses to see beauty in bubbles and friendship in bathroom mirrors and meaning in every small moment. In a show about the apocalypse, about trauma, about loss and grief and growing up and everything falling apart, BMO remains unchanged. Not because BMO's simple, but because BMO understands something the rest of us forget. The world's already broken, so you might as well play pretend and love people and find magic in the weird spots. Sometimes the most human thing isn't having a heart, it's choosing to use it anyway, even when you're made of circuits and screens. Imagine coming home from a trip and discovering your entire world has been rewritten by cosmic forces into 4 competing utopias, each one a nightmare dressed up as paradise. That's what Finn and Jake return to after their ocean voyage. Oo's been elementally redistributed, and everyone they know has been transformed into extreme versions of themselves based on primal magical forces. The Elements miniseries is Adventure Time's meditation on what happens when you take people's core traits and dial them up to 11, removing all the messy complexity that makes them human, or candy, or whatever. There are 4 elemental powers in Ooo, each represented by a different kingdom. Ice, Ice Kingdom, Fire, Fire Kingdom, Slime, Slime Kingdom, and Candy, Candy Kingdom. For centuries these elements existed in balance, their representatives maintaining their territories without encroaching. Then Patient St. Pim, an ancient ice elemental who froze herself before the Mushroom War, wakes up and decides balance is boring. She wants elementals to reach their full potential, which in practice means unleashing their powers until they consume everything. Her plan works. Too well. The elemental magic goes haywire, and each kingdom begins spreading like aggressive ideologies, converting everything in their path. The Ice Kingdom expands into a crystalline landscape where everyone becomes ice creatures, beautiful, perfect, and completely emotionless. It's serenity through lobotomy, peace achieved by removing the capacity to feel anything at all. Ice elementals don't suffer because they can't suffer, which seems nice until you realise they also can't love, can't connect, can't be anything except cold and perfect. The Fire Kingdom becomes pure chaos and passion, everyone transformed into flame people who burn with unfiltered emotion. It's all intensity, all the time, rage and joy and desire cranked to maximum with zero impulse control. They're alive in the most literal sense, burning through everything including themselves, unable to exist without consuming. The Slime Kingdom turns into a toxic swamp of radical acceptance, where everything's chill to the point of dissolution. No boundaries, no structure, no self, just primordial ooze absorbing everything into undifferentiated sameness. It's the opposite of the Ice Kingdom's rigid perfection, total formlessness, where individuality melts away into communal sludge. But the Candy Kingdom is where it gets truly horrifying. Princess Bubblegum's elemental transformation turns her into a hyper-amplified version of her control issues. The entire land becomes candy, not just buildings and objects, but people. Everyone's converted into happy, smiling, simple candy citizens who exist in a state of perpetual childlike joy. They can't feel pain, can't question, can't want anything except to be happy and together and safe under PB's eternal protection. It's Bubblegum's perfect world. Everyone's safe because everyone's been stripped of agency, complexity, danger. No one can hurt themselves or others if they're just walking gumdrops who giggle and hold hands. It's her surveillance state taken to its logical extreme. Protection that becomes suffocation. Love that becomes imprisonment. Finn and Jake watch their friends disappear into these elemental extremes. Marceline becomes Marshmalline, a bouncy marshmallow creature who mistakes violence for wrestling and can't access any of her 1,000 years of darkness. LSP becomes, well, LSP's actually immune because her lumps apparently trump elemental magic, which is the most LSP thing imaginable. The miniseries forces a reckoning. What are we without our contradictions? The Ice Kingdom offers peace without warmth. The Fire Kingdom offers passion without restraint. The Slime Kingdom offers acceptance without identity. The Candy Kingdom offers safety without freedom. Each element taken to its extreme becomes dystopia. Because people aren't meant to be purely anything. We're messy combinations of fire and ice, chaos and order, self and other. The elementals don't enhance Oo's residents. They simplify them into caricatures. The resolution requires literally resetting the elementals, bringing them back to balance. Not eliminating them, the elemental forces are fundamental to Oo's magic, but tempering them, mixing them, making them coexist instead of conquer. It's Adventure Time saying, your darkness matters as much as your light. Your chaos balances your order. Your complexity is what makes you you, and any ideology that demands purity, emotional, moral, elemental, is selling you a beautiful lie. Would you choose perfect happiness if it meant erasing everything that makes you complicated? Princess Bubblegum tried. And for a brief moment she got exactly what she always wanted. A kingdom where nothing could ever go wrong, because nothing could ever be anything except sweet. Turns out, a world without bitterness can't taste sweetness either. For the first few seasons, Princess Bubblegum and Marceline have this tension. They're awkward around each other in ways that feel too specific to be random. PB gets flustered. Marceline gets passive-aggressive. They have inside jokes and old wounds and a history that the show doesn't explain, just shows you in stolen glances and loaded silences. Then you find out they dated. Centuries ago, before the Candy Kingdom became a surveillance state, before Marceline fully retreated into her immortal loneliness, they were together. And it ended badly. Not explosively. Adventure Time doesn't do soap opera drama. It ended the way real relationships end when you're fundamentally incompatible, but still deeply in love. Gradually, painfully, with both people becoming versions of themselves the other can't recognize anymore. Princess Bubblegum became more controlling, more obsessed with protecting her kingdom, more willing to sacrifice personal connection for the greater good. Marceline became more isolated, more convinced that caring about anyone means watching them leave or change or die. They wanted different things. PB wanted structure and safety. Marceline wanted freedom and authenticity. So they drifted apart, and the hurt calcified into centuries of unresolved tension. The show reveals this through breadcrumbs, a shared shirt, an old photograph. Marceline's song, I'm Just Your Problem, that's clearly about someone specific, someone who made her feel like her chaos was too much, like she needed to be fixed. Someone who, let's be real, was absolutely Princess Bubblegum trying to manage Marceline's grief like a science experiment. Sorry I don't treat you like a goddess. Is that what you want me to do? Sorry I don't treat you like you're perfect, like all your little loyal subjects do. That's not subtle. That's a breakup song about dating someone who rules a kingdom and forgot how to just be a person. But here's where Adventure Time does something beautiful. It doesn't leave them broken. Over the course of the series, they heal, slowly, awkwardly, through small moments of vulnerability that add up to something bigger. The Stakes miniseries is where the shift really happens. Princess Bubblegum stays by Marceline's side through her vampire crisis, not as a ruler helping a subject, but as someone who genuinely cares. She sees Marceline at her most vulnerable, wanting to die, wanting to change, wanting to escape immortality, and she doesn't try to fix it. She just stays, listens, supports, and Marceline, for maybe the first time in centuries, lets someone in, lets PB see her fear, her loneliness, her desperate hope that forever doesn't have to mean alone. They're both immortal, both powerful, both carrying centuries of baggage. But together, maybe that weight becomes manageable. By the later seasons, they're tentatively trying again, going on dates, holding hands, having conversations that aren't loaded with past resentments. PB learns to loosen control, to trust that Marceline won't disappear if she stops monitoring everything. Marceline learns that vulnerability isn't weakness, that letting someone love you doesn't guarantee they'll leave. The finale gives us what we'd been waiting for. They're together. Actually together. Not hinted at or subtext, but explicitly, canonically in love. They hold each other during the final battle. They kiss. And when the dust settles and Ooo rebuilds itself once again, they're side by side. Two immortals who finally figured out that eternity is bearable if you have someone to share it with. This was huge. In 2018, having an explicitly queer relationship as a central emotional arc in a children's cartoon was revolutionary. Not because Adventure Time made a big deal out of it. The show treats their love as naturally as it treats Finn's crushes or Jake's marriage, but because it existed at all, unashamed and beautiful and complex. Bubbline isn't perfect. PB still has control issues. Marceline still pushes people away when she's scared. But they're trying, growing, learning that love isn't about fixing each other. It's about accepting each other's broken pieces and choosing to stay anyway. Two women who've lived for centuries, who've seen civilizations end and begin, who've lost everyone they've ever loved, finally finding each other again. Not because the universe demanded it, but because they chose it. Chose vulnerability over safety, chose messiness over loneliness, chose love despite knowing exactly how much it hurts to lose. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is try again with someone who already broke your heart. Because maybe this time, you're both different enough to make it work. And in Ooo, where everything's already weird, two immortal ex-girlfriends getting back together and actually making it stick, that's the most mathematical thing of all. Before the Candy Kingdom was a kingdom, before Princess Bubblegum was really a princess, she was just Bonnibel, a pink girl alone in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, trying to build something that mattered from the radioactive wreckage of human civilization. And she was lonely, so she did what any genius scientist would do when faced with existential isolation. She built herself a family. Uncle Gumbald, Aunt Lolly and Cousin Cheekle weren't born, they were created. Bonnibel synthesized them in her lab, crafting relatives from candy and science because the alternative was being completely alone in a dead world. She gave them personalities, intelligence, purpose. She made them to help her build the Candy Kingdom, to share the dream of creating something beautiful and safe in Oo's chaos. And for a while, it worked. They built together. Gumbald was clever and ambitious, helping design the kingdom's infrastructure. Aunt Lolly was caring and organised. Cheekle was there, doing his best. They were a family, or at least the closest thing Bonnibel could manufacture from loneliness and sugar molecules. Then Gumbald got jealous, not of her power, of her vision. He wanted the kingdom to be different, to reflect his ideas instead of hers. He saw Bonnibel's protective instincts as control, her scientific genius as arrogance, her need to keep citizens simple and safe as tyranny. Which, to be fair, he wasn't entirely wrong about. But his solution wasn't to talk it out or compromise. His solution was to overthrow her, take the kingdom, and replace her entirely. Gumbald created Dum Dum Juice, a serum that would reduce Bonnibel's intelligence to that of a simple candy person, effectively lobotomizing her into a docile, harmless version of herself. He planned to make her drink it, erase everything that made her Princess Bubblegum and rule in her place. Family dinner with a side of betrayal. Very normal stuff. But Bonnibel discovered the plot, and in a moment that defines everything about who Princess Bubblegum becomes, she turned the tables. She tricked them into drinking their own serum, transforming Uncle Gumbald into Punchy, Aunt Lolly into Manfred the Pinata, and Cousin Cheekle into Crunchy. She erased their memories, their intelligence, their ability to ever threaten her again. Then she kept them around. For centuries. Just hanging out in the Candy Kingdom, simple and harmless, while PB ruled alone. That's cold. Like Ice King levels of cold, except Ice King has the excuse of literal magical brain damage. PB made a choice. Rather than exile her family or reason with them or find some middle ground, she erased them. Reduced them to the very thing Gumbald wanted to reduce her to. Mindless candy creatures who couldn't hurt anyone because they couldn't think. And here's the thesis on Princess Bubblegum's entire character. She learned from Gumball that intelligence equals danger, that complexity breeds betrayal, that the only way to truly protect her kingdom is to keep everyone, friends, citizens, family, simple enough that they can't threaten her. Gumball's betrayal didn't just hurt Bonnibel, it infected her philosophy of governance. The simple candy people, the surveillance, the constant control, that all traces back to the day her created family tried to lobotomize her and steal everything she built. PB learned that even people you make from scratch, people you design to love you, will still betray you if you give them the capacity to think for themselves. Centuries later, Gumball gets transformed back, along with Lolly and Cheekle, through various magical mishaps, and he immediately goes back to trying to destroy PB, proving in his mind that he was right to hate her all along. He builds his own kingdom, gathers an army, starts a war. The family conflict that began in betrayal centuries ago finally erupts into full-scale battle. But here's where it gets complicated. Gumball isn't entirely a villain. He's a victim of Bubblegum's control who then became an abuser himself. He's what happens when someone with legitimate grievances lets revenge consume them for literal centuries. He and PB are mirrors, both brilliant, both controlling, both convinced their way is the only way to build something good. The Candy War storyline forces Bonnibel to confront what she did, not just to Gumball, but to all the people she's protected by limiting their autonomy. Her uncle's villainy is partly her creation. She could have handled the betrayal differently, but she chose the nuclear option. Dum-dum juice, erasure, control. In the end, during the final battle, there's a moment where they could reconcile, where Bonnibel could admit her part in this cycle. But reconciliation requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust. And trust is the one thing PB learned never to give. Gumball falls to his death, an accident, a tragedy, an ending that satisfies no one. And Princess Bubblegum is left with the knowledge that her first family, the people she literally built to love her, hated her enough to spend centuries plotting revenge. Sometimes the worst betrayals don't come from strangers or enemies. They come from the family you made in a lab when you were young and scared and desperate not to be alone. And sometimes, the person you become trying to prevent that betrayal from happening again is worse than the betrayal itself. Would you erase someone's mind to protect yourself? Princess Bubblegum did. And that choice echoed through centuries, turning family into enemies, love into war, and a scared girl trying to build something good into a ruler who couldn't let anyone get close enough to hurt her again. Turns out, you can build a kingdom from candy, but you can't build trust from control. Who knew? What happens when you lose your arm to a cosmic horror? That arm grows into a person with all your memories, and that person has to watch you keep living the life they think should be theirs. You get Fern, Adventure Time's most tragic exploration of identity, and the answer to a question nobody asked. What if your own shadow self could fight back? Fern is born from Finn's severed grass sword arm merged with the Finn sword, an alternate timeline Finn who got trapped in blade form because multiverse shenanigans are just Tuesday and Ooo. When these two pieces of Finn collide, they create something new. A grass clone who has every memory Finn has, every experience, every relationship, every moment of heroism and failure. Fern remembers being Finn. He remembers Jake raising him, kissing Flame Princess, losing to the Lich, finding his deadbeat dad Martin. All of it. But he's not Finn. And that's the horror. Imagine waking up one day with a complete life in your head. Childhood, adventures, friends who love you, only to discover those memories belong to someone else who's still walking around living the life you remember as yours. You're not a person, you're a copy, a glitch, a mistake made of grass and existential dread. At first, Fern tries to coexist. He and Finn are brothers, right? They share everything. Memories, experiences, Jake as a sibling. They even look similar except Fern's green and has a grassy, unstable quality that hints at his artificial nature. He helps Finn on adventures. He tries to be a hero. He wants to prove he's just as real, just as valid, just as Finn is. But the jealousy creeps in. Because everywhere Fern goes, he's Grass Finn. The copy, the weird one, the backup. Jake loves Finn. Princess Bubblegum trusts Finn. The whole kingdom knows Finn. And Fern, Fern's the guy people politely acknowledge while waiting for the real hero to show up. The grass sword curse doesn't help. It amplifies his worst impulses, feeding his insecurity and rage, turning normal teenage jealousy into something darker and more consuming. Fern starts believing that if he could just replace Finn, if he could become the Finn everyone loves, then he'd finally be real. His identity crisis metastasizes into something dangerous. If I eliminate the original, maybe I become legitimate. Uncle Gumball exploits this, using Fern's insecurity as a weapon against Finn and the Candy Kingdom. Gumball doesn't see Fern as a person either, just a tool, a weapon shaped like a hero. And Fern goes along with it, because at least someone's treating him as important, even if it's a villain using him for revenge. The final confrontation between Finn and Fern is heartbreaking, because they're fighting themselves. Every move Finn makes, Fern knows. They share muscle memory, combat training, tactical thinking. They're evenly matched because they're the same person, except one of them is drowning in self-hatred and the other is trying desperately to save his literal dark side from self-destruction. In the end, Fern dies. The grass curse consumes him, and in his final moments, he gets what he always wanted, Finn's recognition. Finn holds him, calls him brother, acknowledges that Fern was real, was valid, was his own person despite sharing the same origin. It's too late to save him, but at least Fern dies knowing he mattered. Finn plants what's left of Fern outside the treehouse, a small sapling that grows into a tree. Fern becomes something new. Not Finn, not a copy, but something that exists independently, rooted in one place, growing toward the sun. It's peaceful, final, a better ending than the eternal comparison, the constant inadequacy, the crushing weight of being someone's shadow. Fern's story is Adventure Time's thesis on identity and self-worth. You can't define yourself by being better than someone else, even if that someone is literally you. You can't earn realness by eliminating the original, and you can't build an identity on borrowed memories and resentment. Am I real if I'm a copy? Fern spent his entire existence asking that question, and the answer is, you were always real. But you couldn't see it because you were too busy trying to be someone else. Sometimes the worst prison isn't being a clone, it's believing you need to be the original to matter. Rest in peace, Fern. You were always your own person. We just wish you'd figured that out before the grass ate your brain. Lumpy Space Princess, LSP to anyone who values their time, is annoying. Deliberately, aggressively, unapologetically annoying. She talks in that grinding Valley Girl rasp, makes everything about herself, throws tantrums over perceived slights, and generally acts like the universe's most dramatic teenager despite being, well, nobody actually knows how old she is, but she's definitely old enough to know better. For the first few seasons, she's pure comic relief. She shows up, causes chaos, complains about her lumps, floats away. Classic side character stuff. Except somewhere between the drama and the self-absorption, Adventure Time reveals something uncomfortable. LSP isn't just annoying, she's homeless, has been for years, and nobody noticed because she's so good at performing like everything's fine. LSP ran away from Lumpy Space, her home dimension, after a fight with her parents. Typical teenage rebellion stuff, except she never went back. She's been living in the woods, crashing with whoever will tolerate her for a night, squatting in abandoned places, surviving on her wits and the kindness of people she constantly alienates. She's literally homeless, and she plays it off like it's a choice, like she's too cool for stability, like living in a tent in the forest is just her vibe. That's the survival mechanism. LSP wraps her pain in so many layers of melodrama and self-importance that you can't tell where the performance ends and the hurt begins. Every complaint about boys, every dramatic proclamation, every "oh my glob" is armor. If she's loud enough, nobody asks why she doesn't have a home. If she's annoying enough, nobody looks close enough to see she's struggling. But the show does. In Gotcha, we see LSP working at a diner, trying to make rent, dealing with actual adult responsibilities while maintaining her princess persona. She's terrible at it. Gets fired, causes chaos. LSP's gonna LSP, but she's trying. She wants stability even if she doesn't know how to achieve it without compromising who she is. The wildest thing about LSP, she's genuinely confident. Not fake confidence hiding insecurity. Actual, bone-deep belief that she's amazing despite all evidence suggesting life has been rough. She's homeless, jobless, friendless, mostly, and she still wakes up every day convinced she's the main character. That's not delusion. That's resilience wearing a crop top and too much attitude. Her romantic life is a disaster wrapped in chaos. She falls for guys who don't deserve her, gets rejected, moves on immediately to the next drama. Every relationship is the one until it isn't, and then she's already moved on, convinced the next guy will finally recognize her worth. It's exhausting to watch, but it's also kind of beautiful. Her refusal to let rejection dim her belief that she deserves love. Then there's her actual superpower. LSP's lumps make her immune to elemental magic. During the Elements miniseries, when everyone gets transformed into extreme versions of themselves, LSP stays exactly the same because her lumps trump cosmic forces. The thing everyone finds annoying about her, her lumps, her lumpiness, her fundamental LSP-ness, is literally what saves her from losing herself. That's the thesis on LSP. The things that make you too much for other people might be exactly what keeps you intact when everything else falls apart. Her melodrama isn't weakness. It's how she processes a world that's been unkind. Her self-absorption isn't narcissism. It's survival when nobody else is looking out for her. By the finale, LSP's still LSP, still dramatic, still homeless, still making everything about her. But she also shows up to fight for Ooo, uses her elemental immunity to help save the world, proves that even the most annoying person you know has value when things get real. The beautiful thing about Lumpy Space Princess is she never gets a redemption arc because she never needed one. She's not broken or wrong or in need of fixing. She's just loud and weird and too much for most people. And instead of shrinking herself to fit, she decided everyone else could deal with it. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't changing to make people like you. It's staying exactly who you are and letting them catch up. Oh my glob, what if we all had LSP's confidence? What if we all refused to make ourselves smaller just because the world finds us inconvenient? The world would be louder, messier, and probably way more annoying. But it might also be a little more honest about what survival actually looks like. For centuries, Princess Bubblegum kept her darkest secret buried under candy architecture and surveillance protocols. She once lobotomized her own family and kept them as simpleton decorations in her kingdom. That secret stays hidden until Uncle Gumbald gets transformed back into his original, intelligent, deeply vengeful self. And the first thing he does? Declare war. Not metaphorical war, not political maneuvering, actual war. Army building, alliance forming, kingdom threatening war. Because when you spend 800 years as a punching bag named Punchy, unable to think or speak or be anything except a joke, you come back with grievances. Gumbald builds his own kingdom, Gumbaldia, right next to the Candy Kingdom, a mirror image designed to be everything PB's kingdom isn't. Where the Candy Kingdom is colourful and controlled, Gumbaldia is stark and militaristic. Where PB rules through surveillance and science, Gumbald rules through charisma and resentment. He gathers everyone who's ever been wronged by Princess Bubblegum, which, let's be honest, is a substantial list, and forms an alliance of the aggrieved. The fascinating thing about the Candy War is how justified both sides feel. Gumbald's right. PB erased his mind rather than deal with his betrayal through any healthy means. She played God with his consciousness, and kept him that way for centuries. That's not justice. That's tyranny with extra steps and a pink bow. But PB is also right. Gumbald tried to lobotomize her first, tried to steal everything she built, tried to remove her agency entirely. She defended herself using the weapon he created. Is that proportional response or perpetuating a cycle? The show refuses to give easy answers. As war approaches, we see Princess Bubblegum at her most paranoid and controlling. She fortifies the Candy Kingdom, builds weapons, prepares for total conflict. She's convinced Gumbald will destroy everything she's protected for centuries, and she's not entirely wrong. Gumbald's planning invasion, conquest, potentially erasing the Candy Kingdom entirely. The threat is real, but her methods? Questionable. She considers preemptive strikes. She manipulates allies. She treats her own citizens like chess pieces in a game they don't understand. The surveillance state goes into overdrive. Every paranoid instinct she's developed over 8 centuries of rule comes roaring to the surface. Finn and Jake find themselves caught in the middle. Two people who love PB but can see she's becoming the thing she fought against. They try to mediate to find peaceful solutions, but how do you negotiate between two geniuses who've both wronged each other across the span of centuries? Then there's Flame Princess. Her involvement in the Candy War represents her most mature moment in the entire series. When Princess Bubblegum expects automatic alliance, FP confronts her about the manipulation, the surveillance, the way PB treats everyone as potential threats rather than people. In a powerful scene, Flame Princess calls PB out. Being a ruler doesn't justify hurting people, and fear doesn't excuse control, and PB listens. Not immediately, not easily, but she actually hears what Flame Princess is saying. That maybe her need to protect has become indistinguishable from the need to dominate. That maybe Gumbold wasn't entirely wrong about her authoritarian tendencies, even if his response was disproportionate. The war itself is anticlimactic in the best way, because wars rarely solve anything. Gumbold falls to his death accidentally during the final battle. No heroic sacrifice, no last-minute redemption. Just a senseless ending to centuries of resentment, leaving everyone feeling empty rather than victorious. The real resolution happens after. Princess Bubblegum dismantles her surveillance network. She starts trusting her citizens with more autonomy. She admits that her need for control came from trauma, from Gumbold's original betrayal, from the Mushroom War, from centuries of protecting a kingdom in a world that keeps trying to end. But trauma doesn't excuse becoming the threat you feared. The Candy War isn't about good versus evil. It's about what happens when two traumatized, brilliant people let their hurt calcify into ideology, when protection becomes oppression, when family wounds fester for centuries until they explode into violence that satisfies no one. Sometimes the sweetest kingdoms are built on the bitterest foundations, and sometimes admitting you were wrong tastes worse than any defeat. The finale of Adventure Time brings every storyline crashing together in a cosmic battle for Oo's survival, and at the centre of it all is Betty Groff, still searching, still sacrificing, still unable to let Simon go even after centuries of trying to save him from the Ice Crown's curse. Golb arrives. Not metaphorically, not as a threat on the horizon. Golb, the primordial embodiment of chaos and entropy, the thing that undoes things, physically manifests in Ooo. It's walking annihilation, a cosmic force so fundamental that even the other gods are terrified. Golb doesn't want to conquer or rule. Golb wants to unmake, to return everything to the formless void before creation. It's the Lich's boss, basically, the ultimate expression of everything ending. And the Ice King is there, still mad, still lost in the crown's curse, still Simon Petrikov trapped in a prison of ice and insanity he can't escape. Betty's spent the entire series trying every possible solution. Magic, science, time travel, cosmic wish-granting entities, forbidden knowledge. She's given up her entire existence, her career, her timeline, her identity, to find a cure for Simon's madness. Every attempt has failed or backfired or made things worse. She's become as obsessed with saving Simon as the crown made Simon obsessed with princesses. Two people trapped in different kinds of madness, both convinced they're protecting the other. When Golb attacks, Betty sees her chance. Not to save Ooh, to save Simon. Because even with reality ending around her, even with everyone fighting for survival, Betty's tunnel vision remains laser-focused on one thing: freeing Simon from the crown no matter the cost. She uses the Ice Crown's power and ancient magic to merge with Golb, to become part of the Chaos entity, to sacrifice her entire being, her humanity, her consciousness, her love, everything that makes Betty Betty, and transform into something cosmic and incomprehensible. In doing so, she gains enough power to break the crown's curse on Simon, to finally, after 1,000 years and countless failed attempts, give him back his sanity. It works. The crown shatters. Simon Petrikov wakes up fully himself for the first time since he put on that cursed artifact in a Scandinavian dock. He's free, sane, human, everything Betty wanted for him. But Betty's gone. Not dead. Worse. She's merged with Golb, transformed into Golbity, a cosmic entity of chaos that can't love him back, can't be with him, can't be anything except the primordial force of dissolution. She saved Simon by erasing herself so completely, that the person he loved no longer exists in any meaningful form. Simon wanted Betty to live her own life, to stop sacrificing herself for him, to choose herself for once. Betty wanted Simon to be free of the crown, to be himself again, to escape the madness. They both got exactly what they wanted for the other person, and it destroyed them both. This is Adventure Time's darkest love story because it's about devotion that crosses the line into self-destruction. Betty loved Simon so much she couldn't see that he would rather stay cursed than lose her. Simon loved Betty so much he tried to send her away to save her from watching him disappear. Two people who destroy themselves to save each other, and in the end, both get destroyed anyway. The finale ends with Simon alive, sane, and more alone than he's ever been. He's free of the crown's madness only to be trapped in the grief of losing Betty forever. He got his mind back, but lost the person who made having a mind worthwhile. Golbetty exists somewhere in the cosmic void, occasionally visible in later Adventure Time media, a reminder that Betty Groff made the ultimate sacrifice, and Simon Petrikoff will spend the rest of his mortal life knowing she shouldn't have done it. Love isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's obsessive, codependent, self-annihilating. Sometimes two people love each other so fiercely they become each other's destruction. Sometimes the sacrifice isn't noble, it's tragic, unnecessary, the culmination of 1,000 years of not being able to let go. Would you unmake yourself to save someone you love, even if they begged you not to? Betty did. And somewhere in the chaos between dimensions, a part of her might still remember why. But Simon's left behind, free and broken, saved and lost, alive in a way that feels like its own kind of death. Sometimes getting what you want is the cruelest punishment of all. Adventure Time doesn't end with Finn and Jake riding off into the sunset. It doesn't wrap up with Princess Bubblegum and Marceline finally kissing, or with Simon and Betty's cosmic tragedy, or even with BMO singing Time Adventure as the residents of Ooo band together to defeat Golb. Instead, the finale jumps 1,000 years into the future, as if to remind us Oo's story never truly ends. There's always another adventure waiting for the next oddballs bold enough to chase it. Enter Shermy and Beth. They're the new kids on the block, the next duo to inherit the role of wandering heroes in a post-apocalyptic, post-Ooo landscape. Shermy is a kind of cat person with Finn energy, impulsive, upbeat, absolutely ready for whatever weird quest fate throws at him. Beth is big, strong, chill, and suspiciously Jake-like. The implication is the show wants us to wonder if she's a distant descendant. Together they stumble across the ruins of Finn and Jake's treehouse, and planted in its remains, the tree that Fern became, grown tall over centuries, with Finn's legendary sword nestled among its branches. They're not copies of Finn and Jake. Adventure Time is too self-aware for that. They're successors, inheritors of the chaotic, beautiful tradition of adventurer pairs in Ooo. BMO, now King BMO, acts as the storyteller who passes down their legend, weaving those old adventures into the fabric of the future. It's BMO's story now, and BMO is just as fabulous at retelling it as creating it. Why jump forward 1,000 years? Because Adventure Time isn't a show about endings. It's about cycles, about how the world remakes itself after every apocalypse, how new heroes will rise after the old ones fall, how the same story can belong to entirely new voices, colours, lumps and genres. Finn's and Jake's heroism isn't forgotten. It's internalised by new generations that are just as weird, just as earnest, just as determined to make sense of whatever the Land of Ooo becomes next. The Land of Ooo itself looks wildly different. Old landmarks are gone, new ones have grown, magic and mutation continue, and the world is still a patchwork of impossible biomes. But the spirit remains, a place where adventure and oddity rule, and where anyone can find purpose if they have the guts and heart to look. Shermy and Beth's arrival isn't just a clever narrative trick to avoid a tidy ending, it's Adventure Time's way of handing responsibility to the audience. BMO tells their story, but Shermy and Beth are the ones who must choose what comes next. Finn's arm, Fern's tree, BMO's memories, all become artifacts for new adventurers to puzzle, reclaim and reinterpret. Is Shermy the new Finn? Is Beth really Jake's distant kin? Are they heroes because they found the sword, or because they decided to use it? These are questions Adventure Time leaves open, inviting viewers to imagine beyond the last frame. It's an ending that refuses to settle, a cycle that loops, 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 as endlessly as Jake stretching or Finn running into battle with a new sword. It's also quietly optimistic. In a world that survived nuclear war, cosmic horror, cycles of tyranny and redemption, love and loss, there will always be another pair of boots stomping through the grass. The world will change, heroes will come and go, but adventure never really stops. So you, listener, watcher, adventurer, what would you do if you found the sword in Fern's tree? Would you chase the echoes of the old legends or write your own? Do lumpiness and heroism mean anything different 1,000 years after Ooo was born, burned, rebuilt, and reimagined? Adventure Time says yes. Every new day, every hero, every sword in a tree moment is a chance to start over, to try, fail, laugh, and change the world just by loving it inventively. After all, the real ending isn't the last episode. It's every new adventure that starts after. Everything comes crashing together in Come Along With Me. Not just the candy war between Princess Bubblegum and Uncle Gumbald, but every storyline, every character, every thread of hope and trauma the show's been weaving for 8 seasons. And above it all literally descends Golb, chaos incarnate, the primordial embodiment of entropy, a cosmic horror so fundamentally destructive that even gods are terrified. The Candy War is still happening when Golb arrives. Gumbald's army faces off against the Candy Kingdom, centuries of family resentment about to explode into violence, and then the sky tears open and something worse than any personal grievance manifests over Ooo. Golb doesn't negotiate, doesn't conquer. It unmakes, dissolves, returns things to formless void. The Lich serves it. Magic Man's brother was destroyed by it, and now it's here, summoned accidentally by Betty's desperate attempts to cure Simon using forbidden magic. Suddenly the Candy War becomes irrelevant. Gumbald and Princess Bubblegum look up at literal apocalypse descending and realise their family drama means nothing if there's no world left to fight over. Uncle Gumbald actually dies during the chaos. Not heroically, just accidentally, falling during the confusion. No redemption arc, no final words, just gone, leaving PB with unresolved trauma and the hollow victory of surviving someone who hated her for 8 centuries. Everyone unites. That's Adventure Time's thesis in action. When the real threat shows up, when existence itself is on the line, all the personal conflicts and kingdom politics fade into background noise. Finn and Jake lead the charge. Princess Bubblegum and Marceline fight side by side, finally together, finally on the same page. BMO rallies the Candy people. Lumpy Space Princess shows up because her lumps make her immune to Golb's reality warping. Even the Ice King is there, still mad, still lost, still kidnapping princesses in his broken mind while the world ends around him. The battle is chaotic, beautiful, desperate. Golb's minions, nightmarish creatures spawned from pure chaos, descend on Ooo. Characters we've watched grow for years fight together. Flame Princess commanding fire, Huntress Wizard with her arrows, Lemon Grab screaming unacceptably at cosmic horrors. It's everyone, all of Ooo, refusing to let their weird, broken, beautiful world dissolve into nothing. Then Betty makes a choice. She merges with Golb, becomes Golbetti, uses the fusion to break the Ice Crown's curse on Simon once and for all. The crown shatters. Simon Petrikov wakes up, actually truly himself for the first time in 1,000 years, and immediately realises what Betty sacrificed to save him. She's gone, transformed into a cosmic entity that can't love him back, can't be human, can't be anything except the chaos force she absorbed to free him. Simon sings. Of course he sings. He picks up Marceline's bass and performs Come Along With Me, a gentle, heartbroken lullaby about adventure and loss and time passing. It's the show's thesis as a song. Everything ends, everyone changes, but the time you had matters. The adventure you shared was real, even if it's over. Golbar, Betty retreats, taking chaos back to wherever chaos lives. Gumbald's dead. The war's over. Simon's free but alone. Oo's saved but scarred. Nobody gets a perfect ending because Adventure Time doesn't do perfect. It does real. The finale refuses to tie everything neatly. It shows us Shermy and Beth 1,000 years later, proving life continues. It shows PB dismantling her surveillance state, learning from her mistakes. It shows Marceline and Bubblegum together, finally allowing themselves happiness. It shows Jake's kids growing up. BMO becoming a storyteller king. Finn planting Fern's remains and visiting regularly. And it shows Simon, sane and sad, staring at the sky where Betty disappeared, knowing she saved him at a cost he never wanted her to pay. Adventure Time ends not with answers, but with acceptance. The world keeps turning. New heroes will rise. Old wounds will heal or won't, and that's okay. The adventure doesn't stop when the credits roll. It just becomes someone else's story to tell. Time is an illusion that helps things make sense, so we're always living in the present tense. It seems unforgiving when a good thing ends. But you and I will always be back then. Come along with me. The adventure never really stops. The original Adventure Time finale gave us closure, but it didn't give us everything. Specifically, it didn't tell us how the story of Finn and Jake, two brothers who saved the world more times than anyone could count, actually ends. For that, we needed Together Again, a Distant Land special that arrived years after the series wrapped and absolutely destroyed everyone who watched it. Here's the truth Adventure Time fans eventually had to face. Jake dies first. Not in battle, not saving the world, not in some dramatic hero sacrifice. He just dies. Because that's what dogs do, even magical stretchy ones. Jake's 28 in dog years when the series starts, and by the end he's older, slower, ready for whatever comes next. He lives a full life, loves Lady Rainicorn, raises weird hybrid puppies, goes on adventures, eats bacon pancakes, stretches into improbable shapes, and eventually, peacefully, stops. Finn keeps going, without his brother, without his best friend, without the person who's been there since before Finn could walk, who taught him everything about being brave and scared and okay with both. Finn lives decades more, grows old, keeps adventuring because that's who he is, but it's not the same. How could it be? Half of him is missing. Together Again opens with old Finn, really old white beard, weathered face, still wearing that bear hat, on one last adventure. He's climbing a mountain to help some birds because Finn never stops being a hero, even when his body's breaking down. And then he saves them, smiles, and dies. Just slips away on that mountaintop, finally joining Jake wherever Jake's been waiting. The afterlife in Adventure Time is characteristically weird. A bureaucratic system of dead worlds numbered 1 through 50, each one representing different spiritual destinations based on your life's choices and karma. Jake ended up in the 37th dead world, chilling, playing card games with dead people, waiting. Not sad, not lonely. Jake doesn't do those emotions the way others do, just waiting for his brother. When Finn arrives in the afterlife, he doesn't remember dying at first, doesn't remember Jake dying. The episode makes you watch Finn rediscover these losses, makes you feel every moment of, oh no, that's right, Jake's gone, hitting him fresh. It's brutal, beautiful, exactly as emotionally devastating as it needs to be. Finn's given a choice. Move on to higher dead worlds, basically reincarnate, level up spiritually, continue evolving, or stay in the 37th with Jake. And here's where Adventure Time delivers its thesis on love and loss. Jake wants Finn to move on, to keep growing, keep adventuring, keep becoming whoever Finn's supposed to become next. Because that's what love actually is. Wanting the best for someone, even when best means they leave you behind. But Finn doesn't want to move on. He wants Jake. He wants his brother, his best friend, the person who made every adventure worth taking. He wants one more day in the treehouse, one more bacon pancake breakfast, one more dude sucking at something is the first step to being sorta good at something. The episode doesn't give easy answers. It makes Finn work through his grief, his attachment, his understanding of what Jake meant and means and will always mean. It shows that love doesn't end when someone dies. It just transforms into something you carry differently. Eventually Finn chooses to reincarnate, to move forward, because Jake convinces him that's the right thing. But before he goes, they have one last adventure together, fighting through the dead worlds, saving each other, being exactly who they've always been. Brothers, heroes. Two weirdos who found each other in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and decided that was enough to build a life on. The final image, Finn and Jake saying goodbye, knowing they'll meet again in some other life, some other form. Because that's the secret Adventure Time's been telling us from the beginning. Nothing really ends. It just changes shape, finds new expressions, comes back different but recognisable. Jake dies before Finn. It's confirmed, it's canon, it hurts like hell. But their friendship transcends death the same way it transcended species, age, sanity, and the literal apocalypse. Time adventure indeed. You and I will always be back then, playing in a treehouse, saving princesses, making bacon pancakes, being exactly the kind of heroes the world actually needs. Together, then, always. Adventure Time isn't just a show about the end of the world, it's a guide for living after everything's already gone wrong. Sure, on the surface it's post-apocalyptic, full of bizarre kingdoms, talking dogs, morality-melting candy, and penguins with secret agendas. But every layer of the Land of Ooo holds an emotional lesson dressed up in an explosion of weirdness and whimsy. That's why people who watched it as kids are still unpacking it as adults, marvelling at how much there is to learn from a cartoon where one of the main recurring questions is, would you eat a donut from a vampire queen? Take trauma, for example. Everyone in Ooo is processing something, losing parents, homes, species, or even their own minds. Finn grows up facing repeatedly broken dreams about his family and what real heroism costs. Simon Petrikov and Marceline illustrate generational trauma, turning loss into legacy, and showing how the things we carry can both break and save us. The show never treats pain as something to run from or erase. Instead, it invites characters and viewers to sit with it, accept it, and sometimes transform it into a song. Adventure Time is also about growing up and never actually stopping. Finn's story moves from wide-eyed superheroism to the heartbreak of relationships, the sting of parental betrayal, and the realization that sometimes the best thing you can do for the world is let it change, and let yourself change with it. Jake, for all his magical powers and laid-back philosophy, teaches us that accepting who you are is better than chasing who you're supposed to be. The show is obsessed with connection, chosen family, lost loves, found friends, and cosmic weirdos who feel as much as you do, even if they're made of candy or live in the nitosphere. Love is central but never simple, often requiring sacrifice, forgiveness, and sometimes just letting go. Bubbline brought genuine, complex queer love to a generation of viewers who didn't often see their stories on screen, handling queer relationships with the same honesty it gave hetero heartbreaks. Then there's the humour. Adventure Time can turn the most harrowing emotional moment into a meme, and vice versa. Its jokes land because they're actually honest about how absurd life and feeling things can be. The surreal and the serious are always dancing. Jake splits into 5, wonders if all versions deserve pancakes. And Marceline sings backup even as she's haunted by a millennium of loss. The comedy isn't just relief, it's survival. Artistically, Adventure Time changed the shape of TV animation, unleashing surreal visuals, inventive storytelling, and dynamic gender roles that inspired endless series, Steven Universe, Over the Garden Wall, and Gravity Falls, to name a few. The people who worked on it became the next generation's creative titans, spreading Adventure Time's gospel of empathy, chaos, and narrative risk-taking everywhere else they went. But maybe the deepest lesson Ooo teaches is this: don't fear change, and don't fear strangeness, your own or the world's. Adventure Time made it okay to feel lost, to grieve, to laugh at the apocalypse, and to believe that healing is always messy, often hilarious, and never finished. You process pain through stories, and you survive by sharing them. In the Land of Ooo, everything is always ending, and yet the adventure goes on. Isn't that what growing up actually is? The world crumbles, you find and lose yourself 1,000 times, and what's left isn't certainty. It's the willingness to keep going, keep loving, keep being weird. Come along with me. The real adventure, surviving, connecting, changing, never ends. The Land of Ooo is strange, and so are you. That's exactly why you belong here. Pendleton Ward, born Ward Taylor, Pendleton Johnston in 1982, raised in San Antonio, Texas, is the mind behind Adventure Time, and his own life foreshadows so much of what makes the show unforgettable. Drawing flipbooks and comics as a kid, studying animation at CalArts, and dreaming up strange worlds long before Cartoon Network came calling, Ward is proof that sometimes the ultimate fantasy world builder is just a person who never grew out of drawing in the margins of their homework. Ward's path to global animation stardom was anything but straight. He published a webcomic called Bueno the Bear, which he deleted for being terrible, his words. He took inspiration from friends and colleagues at CalArts who would later shape the Adventure Time crew, and from quirkier sources, the irreverent dungeon French fantasy comics. His student film, Barista, starred Bueno the Bear, a motif that would recur in his side projects and personal branding. Before Adventure Time, Ward worked at Frederator Studios and did stints on other celebrated shows like The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, working alongside future creative giants like Alex Hirsch, Gravity Falls, and J.G. Quintel, regular show. Flapjack's storyboard-driven, artist-forward process left a huge impact on him, fostering the fun factory sense of collaborative chaos that would define Ooo. The road to Adventure Time itself wasn't smooth. Ward's pilot version was rejected by Nickelodeon. Only after it gained viral popularity online did Cartoon Network pick it up, and even then, it took time and considerable risk to convince the network that this bizarre, slapstick, post-apocalyptic fever dream with mathematical catchphrases could work. It paid off. The show premiered in 2010 and quickly became one of the most influential Western animations of the 21st century, running a full decade, spawning specials, and creating both cult iconography and legitimate mainstream impact. Ward didn't just create Adventure Time, he infused it with his voice, vision, and vulnerability. He personally voiced Lumpy Space Princess, channeling both the humour and gender ambiguity that became core to the show's spirit. Ward's personal quirks, his fascination with the melancholy and the silly, his embrace of collaborative chaos, his affinity for genre pastiche and emotional honesty, became Oo's blueprint. But success came at a cost. By the 5th season, Ward stepped down as Adventure Time's showrunner, citing the toll the job took on his mental health and quality of life. Still, he remained involved as a writer, storyboard artist and executive producer, seeing the show through to its finale. Ward's openness about burnout resonated with fans and creators alike. Adventure Time's own themes of processing loss, finding joy in weirdness, and knowing when to let go all echo in his journey. Outside Adventure Time, Ward created other cult favourites. Bravest Warriors, The Midnight Gospel, a mind-bending, philosophy-heavy collaboration with Duncan Trussell for Netflix, and more. His voice and creative fingerprints are scattered across modern animation, both in his direct projects and in the rising generation of creators mentored under his whimsical, boundary-pushing style. Pendleton Ward's greatest legacy may be this. He made it okay for cartoons to be strange, sad, and deeply personal, while also being silly and fun. He showed that animation could process existential pain, LGBTQ+ love, recurring apocalypses, and the beauty of a fart joke, all without ever condescending to its audience. He made it okay for everyone, kids, adults, misfits, and heroes, to feel a little unfinished, to come along for the ride, and like any true Adventure Time hero, he taught us that the best worlds come from the weirdest parts of ourselves. The adventure never ends, and neither does the impulse to draw the next page, no matter how improbable it seems. Stay mathematical, Pendleton. Ooh will always have room for one more adventure.